Chapter 500. Then Water Depth recalled and explained in detail. It turned out that the day before yesterday, when the various guilds were doing some guild quests in the guild building, they all received a letter from the system. The content wasn't much at all. It only said that the battle for the main city would be held in the next few days. It was an advance notice, and the guilds were encouraged to make the best use of their time and prepare for it. This was the so-called "a stone that causes 1,000 ripples" situation. Although it was only 2 short sentences, it came from the system's announcement. After confirming that today wasn't April 1st, no one would question the authenticity of this news. How long would the unexpected be? A week? 2 weeks? Or a month? While the players were guessing, they made the best use of their time to prepare according to the letter. Leveling, getting equipment, grinding skills. At this time, everyone felt that there was still a lot to do. Developing in the game could be said to be a chinli in a day. For example, the players of Child Elite Group had only been running around for 3 to 5 days, and their level ranking had plummeted. Water Depth's jungle combat training had already begun a few days ago. When he received the news that this activity was about to begin, he felt that his luck was really on his side. After the final defeat in the quest against reigning the 4 seas, Water Depth discovered many of his guild's shortcomings. Needless to say, the gap between them and an abnormally strong person like Gu Fei was something that could only be encountered by chance. As a guild, Water Depth still felt that it was most important for everyone's ability to be maximized. In that quest, the thing that left the deepest impression on him was reigning the 4 seas' well-coordinated archery formation. Water Depth's guild had the most lurkers who could double up as archers. Originally, he wanted to try and train everyone's archery coordination. He believed that when combined with their trap formation, it would be extremely powerful. But even so, in reality, Water Depth felt that the dense forest terrain of Shady Forest City was really uncomfortable, and always hindered the archers' performance. It wasn't without reason that most of the archers in Shady Forest City had turned into lurkers. Just when he felt that he couldn't go on any longer, this expert entered the guild. The expert was indeed an expert. After a little participation, he began to explain some of the key points of jungle combat to Water Depth from theory. First of all, he had to understand the undeniable effects of objective factors in jungle warfare. For example, the cover of the tree trunk was not conducive to large-scale maneuvers, which would weaken the range of long-range attacks. The tree trunk occupied a certain position, which would seriously affect the formation and overall coordination. Another example was that large-scale weapons would not be able to enter the forest at all. Of course, this problem was too real, but it could be ignored in the parallel world. This was the situation of waking up the dreamer with a single word. He could faintly sense the depth of the water. It was always hovering in his mind, but it was knowledge that could not be expressed in words. As a professional, he had an accurate summary. This analysis made Shui trust this person even more, and she asked for his advice. The expert also gave his opinion based on the actual situation in the game. First of all, the drawbacks of the jungle existed for both sides, be it in reality or in the game. Therefore, how to reduce the impact of the drawbacks on oneself and make full use of the characteristics of the jungle became the key to victory. If Brother Yu was here, you would have written down a thick book about the theories explained by the experts. This was no longer as simple as providing some gaming experience and skills. It was basically a mature scientific system. With so many things, it was impossible for the players to absorb everything in a short period of time. Moreover, there were many differences between the game and reality. In the end, Shui went through another round of selection, and felt that the only thing that could be done quickly was clothing. However, this alone allowed them to quickly feel the sweetness of the experiment after putting it into use. A self-made outer suit did not affect the attributes of the original equipment. With clothes that were similar to the color of the environment, it was indeed easier to hide in the jungle. Another reason was that it was impossible to determine the class of the opponent at first glance based on the attire, so they had to use identification. This was the difference between the game and reality. The players in the game had completely different classes, and each class had different ways of PK. If they couldn't figure out the class, they would just fight. It was either a beginner noob or a heaven-defying expert like Gu Fei. In short, they were all unconventional. After that, Shui listened to the expert's advice and no longer attempted to carry out large-scale coordinated operations in the jungle. Due to the lack of visibility in the jungle, even the best commander would not be able to effectively observe the changes in the battle situation. This way, they would not be able to seize the opportunity to carry out the best command. Didn't they see the Han family young master repeatedly making a big deal out of being at the highest point in the competition? Therefore, in the jungle, everyone had to rely on their individual combat ability. In group activities, a group didn't need too many people, because it was useless even if they had too many people. This was because a group that lacked a unified command basically couldn't be considered a group. Shui agreed with this, and then divided the guild of 15 to 20 people into dozens of small teams that specialized in jungle operations. The division process also caused some trouble, because friends who had a good relationship with each other naturally liked to split up and move together, and Shui couldn't possibly go against their wishes. In the end, many of the small teams weren't the ideal combination in Shui's mind, but that was the only way. After all, it was just a game, not a real army. It was impossible for an individual to completely obey the organization. After that, Shui started to lead his troops in the jungle, leveling up while carrying out practical training. Positioning. This was something that the experts repeatedly emphasized when it came to long-range professions performance in jungle operations. If you had a good positioning, the tree trunk would be your helper. If you had a rubbish positioning, the tree trunk would be a hindrance. This became a famous saying in Shui's guild recently, and having a good positioning became everyone's ultimate goal. This was something that couldn't be taught, and could only be experienced in real combat. How to position oneself the most comfortable, and how to make the enemy the most uncomfortable. Shui talked nonstop like this along the way. Everywhere they passed, Shui's subordinates would stand up and look at them. After many days of training, he didn't know how much other things had improved, but his personal discipline had improved, and he had the demeanor of a soldier. But according to T-Bai, Gu Fei and Sword Demon weren't very interested in what he was talking about. As for Gu Fei, his individual combat ability was already at the peak, and he could even take on a whole team by himself. As for Sword Demon, he came with a goal, not to mention that he wasn't the guild leader anymore, so he didn't have much time to study how to coordinate and command a team. Gu Fei saw that Shui was so excited that he forgot to ask why the two of them were looking for him. In this kind of situation, with Sword Demon's personality, he really couldn't open his mouth, so he had no choice but to give them a push. What? Shui spoke along the way, and the two only listened and didn't speak. They were feeling a little lonely, and when they saw that Gu Fei seemed to have a problem, they were happy and immediately turned around. Looks like you're quite busy, so we won't disturb your parade. We'll be leaving first. Gu Fei was hinting to advance by retreating. If it was a normal person, of course they would have reacted and immediately asked, "Right, why are you guys here?" However, Shui was a passionate person, and when he was happy, he wasn't a normal person. He said, I haven't introduced Old Duan to you guys yet. Old Duan was the expert who taught them how to fight in the jungle." Shui kept mentioning this person's name along the way, and both Gu Fei and Sword Demon were numb. Next time. Gu Fei laughed dryly. He really dug a hole to bury himself. This comrade Shui had completely short-circuited today. Does he even know how to be a human? We're about to leave. Do you dare to ask why we're here? Don't, since we're already here. Let's see and listen and gain knowledge. Knowledge is power. Shui continued to short-circuit. Gu Fei looked at Sword Demon helplessly, and Sword Demon's expression was also quite helpless. He casually asked, "What's this comrade Old Duan's name?" "ID is Water-Breaking Arrow." "What?" Before Shui could finish, the two of them already cried out in shock. "Water-Breaking Arrow. What's wrong?" Shui touched his head in confusion. Gu Fei and Sword Demon stared at each other intensely. "What the hell? There's actually such a coincidence. What's wrong with you two?" Shui asked. "Nothing." As Gu Fei said that, he could already see the dejected expression on Sword Demon's face. He was sure that Sword Demon would definitely give up on this mission. Otherwise he wouldn't be Sword Demon, but Han family young master. Come, let's go. Old Duan isn't far ahead. Shui was still enthusiastically trying to introduce his family's talent to the two of them, looking like a child eagerly showing off his newly acquired limited edition toy to his friends. Since we're already here, let's see what kind of person he is. Gu Fei sent a private message to Sword Demon. Okay, Sword Demon said. Do you still plan on continuing this mission? If you do, there'll be a chance later. I'll take him down with my sword, you take him down with your blade, and then run. Gu Fei had a very bad heart. Forget it. Sword Demon didn't have any hesitation. Besides, it was just a daily mission. If he gave up on today's mission, he could just take another one tomorrow. After following Shui for a few more steps in the forest, this guy was already shouting at the top of his lungs. Old Duan, where are you? Let me introduce you to two fierce people. A person drilled out of the bushes and looked over. Gu Fei and Sword Demon also looked over at the same time. He wasn't tall, but he stood there as steady as a stone Buddha. He had a buzz cut and a square face, but the makeup on his face was too fancy to make out his appearance. Although he was wearing equipment and camouflage on the outside, Gu Fei could still see the strong muscles on his body at a glance. His body is very strong. This guy isn't an ordinary person. After listening to Shui's description along the way, Gu Fei guessed that this person might be a military enthusiast, and of course he could talk about these theories. At this time, looking at him, it was obvious that he had a body that had undergone intensive training, which was not something that ordinary people would have. Is he really a veteran or something? Gu Fei wondered. Butterfly Knot. 500 chapters. New volume, new chapter, new character. Chapter 501. Come. Water Depth enthusiastically waved at Old Duan, then greeted Gu Fei and Sword Demon. His attentive attitude was comparable to that of a professional matchmaker. This is Comrade Old Duan that I've been telling you guys about. Water Depth first introduced Broken Arrow to Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Hello. Broken Arrow first shook hands with Sword Demon, then extended his hand to Gu Fei. Hello. Gu Fei stretched out his hand to shake hands with him. His eyes quickly swept over the other's hand. When he raised his eyes, the water-breaking arrow's gaze also moved away from his hand. Gu Fei smiled slightly and let go of his hand. These two. Water Depth's voice suddenly rose an octave, startling the three present. This is Sword Demon. Old Duan, if you've had any contact with him in-game, there's no way you haven't heard of his name. This is the publicly recognized #1 expert in the game, and also my good brother for many years. Water Depth introduced Sword Demon. Sword Demon hurriedly acted humble. Whatever, it was all in the past. This one. Qianli was drunk. How is it, Old Duan? You already know who he is, right? Water Depth said. Oh, I know. I've heard a lot about you. Old Duan said. Clearly, in this parallel world game, Gu Fei's reputation was much greater than Sword Demon's, and as time passed, his name became less and less of a secret. Seeing Water Depth's excited expression, Gu Fei now knew that introducing Old Duan to the two of them was a child's way of showing off. On the other hand, introducing the two of them to Old Duan was also a way of showing off. This guy. At this time, Water Depth had had his fill and finally returned to a normal person's mentality. He looked at the two of them and said, "Oh right. Why did you guys come looking for me?" "It's nothing. I just passed by Shady Forest City and came to see you. I wanted to say that if you're not busy, we can get together. But looking at you, you seem to be quite busy," the Sword Demon said. "That's right. We still don't know what this city war is about, so we need to hurry up and study it. Once we become the lords of this city, you can come back and let me properly play the role of a host." Deepwater put his hand on the Sword Demon's shoulder and said with a smile. All right, we'll be leaving first." Sword Demon bid farewell to Deepwater. "Take care, I won't send you off." Deepwater waved goodbye to the two and immediately dove into the bushes, continuing to study jungle warfare with his soldiers. "That water-breaking arrow isn't an ordinary person," Gu Fei said to the Sword Demon as he watched them walk away. "What? His body is very strong, his knuckles are thick, and his skin is rough. Gu Fei said. What does it mean? Sword Demon said. He's trained, and he's trained to an extraordinary level. Gu Fei said. No, the few characteristics you mentioned. I think some people who engage in heavy physical labor will have them. For example, migrant workers. The Sword Demon said. The main point is his handshake. Gu Fei said. His strength is neither too big nor too small, it's just right. This shows that he has considerable control over his strength. This is definitely a quality that can only be developed through specialized training. Really? How come I didn't notice? The Sword Demon looked at his right hand. It was also the one that shook Water-Breaking Arrow's hand. He didn't feel that Water-Breaking Arrow's handshake was any different from an ordinary person's. Of course, this is also something that needs to be felt by people who have been specially trained. Gu Fei said. If that's the case, then this person must be very strong in PK. The Sword Demon had a tragic expression on his face. He thought of the 100 Realms of Wisdom and Gu Xian. These guys who had been trained were on a completely different level from ordinary players. That's not necessarily true. Gu Fei said. I see that his waist, abdomen, thighs, and neck are all obviously thicker, indicating that this guy is a strength type. If he chose to be a warrior, it may be more difficult to deal with, but he is now an archer. His advantage is agility, which doesn't match with his usual style. After such a long time in the game, Gu Fei no longer just blindly focused on Kung Fu. In this environment, he also needed to be proficient in the necessary rules of the game. How to combine Kung Fu with the game's profession, attributes, and skills was the main topic that Gu Fei was currently researching. You can actually use Identify on people. The Sword Demon was very surprised. No, I didn't use it, Gu Fei said. Then how do you know he's an archer? The Sword Demon said. You heard his name, Water-Breaking Arrow. He's destined to be an archer. Gu Fei said. How could there be such a thing? The Sword Demon wiped his sweat. But he is indeed an archer, isn't he? Gu Fei smiled. That's right, he's a godly archer, but the way you judge. I'm joking. I saw the bow on his back. Gu Fei said. The Sword Demon was speechless. Are you really going to give up this mission? Gu Fei asked for one last confirmation. Give it up. The Sword Demon sighed. He's a friend with deep waters, and it's a personal mission. Have you ever thought about why the Assassin League designated him as your assassination target? Gu Fei said. What do you mean? The Sword Demon asked. Isn't there a saying? People do it, and the heavens are watching. Of course, in reality, there's no such thing as the heavens, but in the game, the system is the heavens. No matter what you do, you can hide it from anyone, but you can't hide it from the system. Gu Fei said. You mean, this guy is like that apple cider vinegar, a PK maniac who kills people like scything flax? The Sword Demon said. Of course, I don't know the specifics, but I think that the system can't just randomly point at a random passerby for you to kill. For PK, it's fine if the system turns a blind eye, but it shouldn't encourage it behind the scenes. Especially when the PK penalty in this game is so heavy. Gu Fei said. You're getting more and more familiar with the game's settings and rules. The Sword Demon was gratified. Sometimes, Gu Fei's rookie behavior really made experts like them want to vomit blood. No, I've just seen the pain of players after being PK. Gu Fei said. The Sword Demon was silent for a long time before saying. What you said makes sense. For example, a two-way mission. This kind of PK confrontation created by the system behind the scenes weakens the PK penalty. From this, you can see the system's attitude. They have a very clear understanding of PK. Also, once you die, you'll lose a level. This kind of punishment is indeed quite heavy. But this can't be helped. The parallel world isn't like the previous games, where new servers can be added every month or even every week. Newcomers can go to the new server and stand on the same starting line as other newcomers. In the parallel world, everyone is in the same world and server. New players will always be behind old players by a period of time. This kind of heavy death penalty, I think it's a kind of suppression for old players, so that we won't be too far behind new players. The difficulty of leveling up should also be set for this purpose. And I dare say that this game will definitely have a level cap. It's impossible to level up endlessly. The Sword Demon was worthy of being an online game veteran for many years. Not only did he not talk about the game's content, but he also talked about the game's operation methods. There's a level cap? Then isn't the current level experience leaderboard meaningless? Gu Fei said. That. The Sword Demon laughed. That's just the current stage of development, created to stimulate players to go online and spend more. When everyone's level reaches the cap and loses its meaning, there will naturally be other leaderboards to stimulate everyone's competition. Don't worry, the Sword Demon said. Gu Fei sighed. Look at the Sword Demon. He clearly saw through the online game's operation methods and tricks to seduce players, but he still couldn't extricate himself from it. Was this the legendary love and death? Well, we've gone off topic. Let's talk about the present. What are you planning to do with this water-breaking arrow mission? Gu Fei said. The Sword Demon thought about it and looked at Gu Fei. Honestly, did you find out that this is a strong person, so you want to fight him, so you're encouraging me? Nonsense. How could I be that kind of person? Gu Fei said righteously. The Sword Demon continued to look at Gu Fei and finally spat out 2 words. It's hard to say. What are you saying? If you really can't handle it, of course I'll help you, Gu Fei said. Let's first investigate this guy's background. If there's really something wrong, then we'll make a move. The Sword Demon finally decided. Go find Brother Yu? Gu Fei shuddered. This was a new mission that he hadn't experienced before. Go find Brother Yu. This guy would follow and report the whole process. Bringing Brother Yu to fight wasn't a problem, but bringing this guy to do missions was a kind of torture because he had too many questions and wanted to know too much. A mission would be broken down by him and studied to death. In a game that relied on missions to level up wouldn't be slow. The person who knew the most information in the game had a lot of time online every day, but his level ranking was never outstanding. There was a reason for this. It's just a random player. It might be too difficult for Brother Yu to investigate. The Sword Demon said. That's true. If it's something like the top 10, it might be easier. Gu Fei said. Unfortunately, he's not. The Sword Demon said. Of course he's not. Gu Fei also nodded. If Breaking Water Arrow was one of the top 10 archers, then as one of the top 10, Yutian Shenming, it was impossible that he didn't know. He would definitely point it out and strongly urge the Sword Demon to work hard to complete the mission and kill him to weaken his competitors. Then where do we start? Gu Fei looked at this experienced online game veteran. Of course we ask the people around us. The Sword Demon said. Go find Ko and ask. Who is that? Gu Fei was puzzled. The wife of Deepwater. Did you forget? The Sword Demon said. Have I seen her? Gu Fei asked. The Sword Demon thought about it. He didn't remember if he had introduced this girl to Gu Fei. What's the difference between asking her and asking Deepwater directly? Gu Fei asked. The difference is that they're not the same person. The Sword Demon replied. Won't she tell Deepwater again? Gu Fei said. That depends on what it is. This shouldn't be the case. The Sword Demon said. Chapter 502. You're very confident. Gu Fei said this on behalf of the Sword Demon. In fact, from the tone and attitude of the Sword Demon that he saw, it was not only confidence, but also conviction. This made Gu Fei feel that the relationship between the Sword Demon and this girl named Ku should not be just that of a friend's girlfriend. They already knew each other very well. Sure enough, the Sword Demon nodded and said, Of course we've been old friends for many years. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go, Gu Fei urged. Aren't you going offline? The Sword Demon was puzzled. Don't mention this kind of disappointing thing at a critical time. You won't die if you're a little late. If it was a day ago, this was what Slenderwaist Dance used to yell at Gu Fei. It could be seen that the principal was actually not dead. Its owner could change it at any time. Immediately after the Sword Demon contacted the girl, he led Gu Fei to continue their journey. The direction was completely opposite from when they were looking for the water depth. The two walked in the direction of Forest Shade City. These two aren't together, Gu Fei lamented. Of course, if they were together, we would have seen them just now. The sword demon simply replied. Gu Fei smelled the confidence that belonged to understanding from his words. Forest Shade City, an inconspicuous village street. Looking at a certain house number, the sword demon checked the chat record, nodded and said it's here. They went forward and knocked on the door. The player who opened the door had a professional smile unique to the service industry. What can I do for you too? I'm looking for Lu Ku, the sword demon replied. Oh, the man responded and invited the two of them into the house. The room was well lit, but it was messy. Rags of various colors were thrown all over the floor. In front of several tables, many players were waving needles and thread and working hard. After the sword demon entered the house, he walked straight in the direction where a girl was holding a shirt and arguing with someone. This is too much. With 2 stitches in such a mess, won't it fall off when you pull it? Of course not. The player who was talking to the girl said with a smile. Pa. The sleeves of the jacket in the girl's hand had already snapped and were completely torn off. Take a look. The girl stretched out her hands and stretched out her torn sleeves and blouse in front of him. The other party was left speechless. It was not strange for his clothes to be torn, but for the thread to be torn off with just a light tug, that was somewhat inexcusable. The player quickly wiped his sweat. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Someone must have been careless and missed a step. I'll take it and redo it. After saying that, he took the sleeves and jacket and rushed to a table. He threw a loud scolding at the girl while scolding. Obviously, this scolding was also to appease the customer's dissatisfaction. Sister Ku, another 10 sets are ready, someone suddenly shouted. All right, I'll call someone to get it after you're done. The girl turned her head in the direction of the shout. When she turned her head, her eyes had already swept over Gu Fei and the sword demon. After shouting, she immediately called out to the sword demon, "You're here." The sword demon also responded. It was a simple dialogue, but Gu Fei heard a very unusual meaning. He confirmed his previous inference that the sword demon and this deep-water wife did not have an indirect relationship. The two of them were very familiar with each other. The way they greeted each other was not very warm, and it did not seem like a polite greeting. Everything was so natural. Only the most familiar friends would use this simple and plain greeting method. After greeting the sword demon, Lu Ku turned her gaze to Gu Fei. She pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Drunk Killer is also here." Gu Fei laughed dryly. He had naturally heard of his various nicknames in the outside world. Although he did not mind, few people called him that directly. You are. The sword demon looked around the room. Making clothes. Lu Ku grabbed a piece of clothing from the table beside her and threw it to the sword demon. The sword demon caught it and shook it open. Gu Fei looked at it and understood what it was. Camouflage uniforms. It was the kind that Deepwater and his subordinates were wearing. It seemed like he was preparing to equip the entire guild, which would require a few hundred sets. This wasn't a small amount of work. In a realistic game, making clothes wasn't as simple as shouting, "Sew into the air," and the clothes would immediately appear in your pocket. It required actual manipulation. Of course, just like archers, this also required the powerful support of the system. Needlework was not something everyone could do. Have you seen Deepwater? Lu Ku took back the clothes that the sword demon handed back to her and asked. I have. The sword demon said. Then of course you know what I am doing? Lu Ku said. I know. The sword demon looked around the room again. Is this your guild's or? No, it's a specialized tailor's workshop. It's Ying Qi's workshop. Didn't you notice the logo on the door? Lu Ku said. That logo is Ying Qi's? The sword demon was astonished. This was one of the more famous workshops in the online gaming world. Old players like the sword demon all knew about it. Lu Ku spread out her hands and said to the player who had just argued, See, I said that your logo doesn't look like it at all. The other player continued to wipe his sweat. We'll find some time to fix it. Come sit here. Lu Ku led the sword demon and Gu Fei to a rare empty table in the room. That person was quite tactful. When he saw Gu Fei and the others come over to sit, he immediately took the work in his hands and squeezed to the side. What's the matter? Lu Ko asked the sword demon. Without holding back, the sword demon told her everything, including Gu Fei and his suspicions of the system's assassination target. Surprise, Gu Fei was surprised again. He finally discovered that the sword demon and Lu Ko weren't just familiar. His relationship with this girl even surpassed his relationship with Water Depth. At least in front of Water Depth, the sword demon was a bit embarrassed to ask for help, but in front of this girl, the sword demon didn't hold back. This was a deep trust. Seeing that he didn't have a chance to interrupt, Gu Fei could only quietly listen on the side. So, you're suspecting that there's something wrong with the water-breaking arrow? Lu Ko tapped the table with her fingertips. At least in the previous mission target that the system pointed out, it's a guy who has accumulated more than 1,600 people. The sword demon said. It's just a game. This isn't too serious a problem, right? Lu Ko said. Behavior comes from a person's character. The sword demon said. You're too serious. Lu Ko replied. I've told you before that some people will indulge themselves in a virtual environment like games without any scruples. This doesn't really mean anything. But at least in this world he's not a good person. The sword demon said. Support, support. Gu Fei said to the sword demon. The sword demon patted Gu Fei. Oh, okay. I got it. But the problem is that I'm not familiar with this person at all, and I don't know much about him. Lu Ko said. Is that so? The sword demon felt incomparably regretful. I have an idea. Gu Fei suddenly said. The two looked at him together. Why don't you take us with you and pretend to be people from your guild? That way, we'll have a lot of opportunities to observe that guy. Gu Fei said. Is this feasible? The sword demon was a bit confused. Lu Ko didn't say anything. Gu Fei smiled at the girl. Haven't you done this kind of thing before? What? The sword demon was a bit confused. Back at Setting Sun City, many of Unhindered's members didn't even know that the real plan was to have Unsworn Sword lead Todd to Setting Sun City's dungeon. However, the depth of the water allowed them to intercept him there. Don't you think it's a little strange? Gu Fei asked the sword ghoul. Water Depth knew that our goal was to send Todd to the dungeon. It's not strange for them to ambush us there, is it? The sword demon said. No, if it was an ambush, there definitely wouldn't be so few people. Doesn't Water Depth know how big our team is? However, while everyone was busy fighting, Deepwater's attention wasn't diverted in the slightest. With only a few people, they dared to wait in the dungeon. There's only one explanation for this. Deepwater and the others are fully aware of our plan. Gu Fei said. Your analysis makes sense. The sword demon had to admit. How could the plan be leaked? Of course, someone had found out about it. Unless the Han clan's young master has a bad sense of humor and deliberately revealed the plan to Shui, so that he would happily run over and then be killed dejectedly. Gu Fei said. It's not that, not that. The sword demon said. At the same time, he gave Gu Fei a meaningful look. Gu Fei could actually think of such a vile act. His realm was no less than the Han family young masters. So someone must have stolen our plan. Gu Fei looked at Lu Ko. Then how do you know it was me? Lu Ko asked. Miss, at that time, your people were all lurkers. You were the only thief. If you wanted to steal the plan, I think the only way was to sneak around Unsworn Sword, right? Other than you, no one else could do it. Gu Fei said. The sword demon was greatly surprised. Young Ko, can you keep up with the speed of ordinary walking after sneaking? That's not it. Gu Fei answered for her. The only one who can do this is probably that slender waist dance. Miss Lu Ko should have blended into our team very casually when we left Forest Shade City. Our team was made up of many mercenary groups and guilds from reigning the Four Seas. The appearance of a new face would not attract attention at all. This was a big loophole for us. That's how Miss Lu Ko has always been in our team, but whenever Unsworn Sword comes up with a plan, she'll sneak around and eavesdrop, then inform Depth of Water of the news. I think my guess is correct, right? All correct. Lu Ko nodded. You're really smart. I think even the Han family young master didn't guess it, right? Speaking of this, the sword demon suddenly felt a chill pass through his heart. Maybe it's not that he doesn't know, he's just pretending not to know. Qianli, your inference just now is likely to be true. This guy deliberately let water depth think that we fell into a trap, and then happily chased after us, only to be ruthlessly cut back by you. That guy. Lu Ku also suddenly remembered the ridicule that the Han family young master gave to water depth when they met in Sunset City. That guy's appearance at that time seemed to be telling them, no matter how powerful Sun Wukong is, he can't escape from the palm of the Buddha. Butterfly not. I got the feeling after writing for 2 days. The last few chapters have been very smooth. This feeling is really cool. Chapter 503. Towards the Han family young master, no one had anything to say. This person's personality was so bad that he was truly a weirdo. Gu Fei had only made a bold assumption, and it turned out to be a prophecy. Now that they thought about it, it seemed more and more likely. However, no one wanted to find the Han family young master to verify it. It had already been so many days. If they only realized it now, it would only become an excuse for them to be looked down upon by him. Don't bring up the past. Sword Demon said painfully. Gu Fei nodded his head. Especially don't say it to water depth. Lu Ke said. Gu Fei and Sword Demon nodded their heads. The two couldn't help but think of the way water depth gritted her teeth when she mentioned the Han family young master. She didn't even know about this matter, and already hated him to this extent. If they added oil to the fire, this guy would probably go crazy. Do you guys think my idea isn't feasible? Gu Fei first brought the topic back to the present. Do you think you guys will be able to discover anything if you secretly spy on him? Lu Ke said. It will at least be of some help, right, Sword Demon? Gu Fei said. Right? Sword Demon couldn't help but reply. Then he realized that he had already unknowingly supported Gu Fei's idea. This was simply a verbal trap. Gu Fei was also very cunning. Since it's like this, I'll support you guys. I also don't want to have a person with a serious character problem in the guild. Lu Ke said. A guild with a few hundred people. Can you guarantee the character of each person? Gu Fei laughed. Of course, this was impossible. It was always the hardest thing to see through a person's heart. This is just a game. Everything is very simple. Randomly killing people, randomly stealing monsters, randomly stealing equipment. This is a bad character. At least in our guild, no one will be like this. Lu Ke said. Really? Since it's like this, then let us help you test whether or not this water-breaking arrow is someone with a bad character who randomly kills people, steals monsters, and randomly steals equipment. Gu Fei said. Okay, come on, change into these clothes. Lu Ke pointed at the pile of clothes at the side. It was the 10 sets of camouflage uniforms that she had just made. I didn't expect us to have the opportunity to try this. Gu Fei smiled at the Sword Demon, but he soon encountered awkwardness when he tried it on. Because these clothes were made by players, they didn't follow the sewing recipe in the game. So they didn't have any attributes. When players wore these clothes, they would wear them on top of their equipment with attributes. A coat and a pair of pants. It was supposed to be very simple, but it was troublesome for Gu Fei because his equipment was a mage robe, which dragged on the ground like a windbreaker. How could a normal coat cover such a windbreaker? Gu Fei didn't know what to do and looked at Lu Ke blankly. Lu Ke looked at his embarrassed face and couldn't help but laugh. Wait a minute. Mages are specially made. Then he turned to the working players and said, I want a mage robe, add one for me. I'll make it now. Gu Fei realized that he had been teased by this girl, but at least he didn't have to use his brain to solve such a difficult problem. Gu Fei was relieved. After all, tailoring in the game didn't take as long as in reality. A set of special camouflage robes was quickly made. Gu Fei took it and put it on. He and the Sword Demon were like two soldiers, standing at the table and looking at each other. More or less unnatural. Then it's this. Lu Ke took out a box from her pocket and opened it. Gu Fei and the Sword Demon looked at it. It was a box of dark, oily mud. Wipe it on your face. Lu Ke looked at the two of them and smiled. The two of them looked at each other. For a guild as harmonious as ours, it's too easy for a stranger to be recognized. But now that we have this special disguise, even acquaintances might not be able to recognize us at a glance. You two have to wipe it on, Lucas said. Gu Fei and the Sword Demon remembered that Deepwater and the players in his guild did indeed smear their faces like ghosts. When they first met, they indeed couldn't recognize Deepwater at a glance. The magical effect that Luca mentioned wasn't fake. Helpless, the two of them could only grab the green mud and smear it on their faces. While smearing it, Gu Fei asked, "What is this made of?" "I don't know the specifics, it's also custom-made. I found that there are a lot of talented people in this game. As long as you can think of it, there's nothing they can't make. This game really does have the raw materials. Right now, the big studios are very optimistic about this business and are trying to recruit talents in this area. This game is becoming more and more like a world," Luku said. Oh. Gu Fei and the Sword Demon replied as they grabbed the thing and smeared it on their faces. Then they looked at each other and asked, "How is it?" "Let me take a look." Luca called out to the two of them and looked them up and down. Then she clicked her tongue in wonder and said, "I won't hide it from you two. If you two run in front of Breaking Arrow like this and he sees you, he'll definitely be suspicious." Why? The two of them were surprised. "Don't you two feel that what you smeared is different from what Deepwater and the others smeared?" Luku said. The two of them thought back. "Their faces are smeared a bit more?" Gu Fei said. "I don't think it needs to be that complicated. A bit simpler is fine," Sword Demon said. Right. Just do it," Gu Fei said. "The entire guild is smearing according to Breaking Arrow's requirements. Only you two are just doing it. Aren't you two exposed?" Luca said. "Requirements? What requirements?" The two of them didn't understand. "You think it's just a few random smears? Are you shooting a movie?" "I don't know the theory behind it either. In any case, according to Breaking Arrow's instructions, there's a specific way to smear it. At the very least, it's not just a few smears but the entire face," Luca said. How is it a specific smear?" the two of them asked. "Wipe your faces clean." "I'll do it," Luca said. The two of them continued to look for a cloth to wipe off the oil paint they just smeared on their faces. At the same time, they saw Luca take out several boxes from her pocket. When she opened them, they saw that they were all smeared with different shades of oil. It was clear that she wasn't using just one color. "Hey." Gu Fei was dissatisfied. There was a technique to smear this thing on the face. This was something that normal people definitely didn't know. This girl didn't say anything. She first took out a bottle and let the two of them smear it. Only now did she take out all the paint to officially smear it on their faces. It was clearly another prank. "What, hey? You guys made our guild so miserable last time. Shouldn't I take revenge? This is already considered light. Come and sit down." Luku pointed at the bench across from her. Gu Fei sat down helplessly. Luca grabbed a handful of mud and was about to throw it at Gu Fei's face. Gu Fei instinctively dodged. This I say, why don't you tell me how to smear it? I'll do it myself." Thinking of a girl wiping his face here and there, Gu Fei felt a bit embarrassed. You're quite old-fashioned. Forget it. I don't know when you two will go to the church. Don't give me any trouble. Don't move," Luca said. "Didn't you learn it from Breaking Water Arrow?" Gu Fei was unconvinced. Women are naturally more talented than men in this kind of thing. "Do you put on makeup every day?" Luca said. Gu Fei was instantly speechless. Then, Luca had already smeared a handful of mud on his face. Gu Fei still wanted to dodge, but after hearing Luca say, "Don't move. If you ruin it, you'll have to start over again," he finally didn't dare to resist anymore. Luca's technique was indeed skilled. Before long, she had already taken care of Gu Fei. Then, she went to smear the Sword Demon. Gu Fei sat to the side. Even his lips had been smeared. They were dry and astringent. It was very uncomfortable. The Sword Demon, who had been smeared, didn't feel good either. The two stared at each other, not knowing what to say. Looking at the other's face, they wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. In the end, they heard Luca's satisfied voice say, not bad at all. All right, you two sit here for a while." In a while, Help me move the clothes to meet up with Deepwater and the others, Lu Ke said as she put away the oil on the table. Then, she went over to continue supervising the players who were rushing to make the clothes. Hey, Gu Fei sent a message to the sword demon. Why did you send a message? The sword demon replied. Don't you think you'll just eat it up if you open your mouth? Gu Fei replied. That won't happen, right? The sword demon replied. Then why didn't you say anything? Gu Fei replied. After a moment of silence, the sword demon spoke first. It should be fine. Deepwater and the others don't talk like that. You didn't eat it? Gu Fei sent another message. No. The sword demon said. He sighed in his heart that humans were really strange. Gu Fei, who was never hesitant when it came to PK, killing, fighting and hunting, was always overcautious when it came to these small things. I'll try. Gu Fei opened his mouth and immediately let out a sigh of relief. He really didn't eat it. This girl. Gu Fei sighed again and again. He had a feeling that he was being teased. However, he was the one who came up with the plan, and he was only following the plan. This was indeed an indispensable part of the plan, and Gu Fei couldn't do anything about it. The sword demon laughed. I've known her for a long time. She's always been like this. A long time? How long? Gu Fei had always been a bit curious about the relationship between the sword demon and Lu Ke. She's probably the longest friend I've known in the game so far, the sword demon said. Even longer than the Han family young master? Gu Fei asked. Longer, the sword demon said. How about the depth of the water? Gu Fei asked again. Depth of the water? That was after I met the Han family young master for a few games, the sword demon said. How many games have you guys played? Gu Fei asked. How many games? How could I remember? The sword demon said. So you guys grew up together in the game world? Gu Fei said. The sword demon nodded. You can say that. Enviable, Gu Fei said. Oh. The sword demon looked at Gu Fei strangely. Gu Fei didn't say anything. He suddenly realized that these guys playing games were like practicing kung fu. They played a game like practicing a set of boxing. The only difference was that the sword demon practiced set by set, and had companions that accompanied him to this day. Moreover, the number of companions was increasing. Gu Fei, from the beginning, was alone. From childhood to adulthood, until now, it seemed that he wouldn't have companions in the future. Gu Fei couldn't help but think of a very popular saying. I'm not practicing kung fu, I'm practicing loneliness. Chapter 504. Sword Demon didn't know that his words had evoked Gu Fei's melancholy. In addition, both of their faces were smeared like ghosts, so he couldn't see their expressions. Seeing that Gu Fei was silent, he didn't say anything more. Gu Fei just sighed with emotion. That was all. What he felt was only sadness and powerlessness towards the decline of kung fu. Hey, you two, get ready to go. Lu Ke was already calling out to the two. The two quickly got up. Put away your clothes and cover your face. You guys aren't planning to parade around like this, are you? Lu Ke said to the two. The two took off their clothes and put them in their pockets. They also put on masks on their faces, and found hats to put on their foreheads. There were many people dressed like this now, so it wasn't uncommon. But the people in this room saw everything. Gu Fei said. It's not their business. Who would be so bored? Lu Ke didn't think much of it. She pointed to the two big sacks on the ground. One for each of you. Carry them and follow me. The pockets on the player's equipment were affected by the number of slots and weight. If it exceeded the number, it couldn't be stuffed anymore. For large-scale mining like Lu Ke, she had to use this unconventional method of carrying things by hand. Gu Fei had also used this method before. In the past, when he killed monsters, he couldn't put the things in his pockets, so he used the sacks to carry them back. It was only after playing the game for a long time that he had some knowledge of the game. He didn't collect all the garbage. He hadn't done this job for a long time. Sword Demon didn't say anything. He went forward and carried one. Gu Fei also went over and took one. He struggled to lift it. Although it was difficult, he finally dragged it off the ground. He staggered to keep up with Sword Demon's pace. Yo, you're a little mage, but you're quite strong, Luca said in surprise. Gu Fei gritted his teeth and looked at Luca. It seemed that this girl wanted to see him make a fool of himself again. Her resentment towards him was quite deep. However, he couldn't let it go on endlessly. Gu Fei secretly thought that if this girl schemed against him again, he would have to think of a way to teach her a lesson. Just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly felt the weight on his hand lighten. He turned his head and saw that the other end of the sack had been lifted by Lu Ke. She looked at him and said, "I'll help you lift it now. When we enter the forest later, you have to work hard. Otherwise, people will think that I'm stupid, and it won't be good for your plan." Gu Fei responded. He understood what Lu Ke meant. Of course, she had pulled a strong man here to do this heavy work. In the end, she had found a guy who couldn't even lift things. If this wasn't a moron, then what was? It was easy to attract a lot of unnecessary attention. Gu Fei and the sword demon didn't want to attract too much attention. Right, we don't have a guild badge. What should we do? Sword demon suddenly said. That's it for now. I'll get you two later. Lu Ke said. How? Sword demon was puzzled. Of course, the two couldn't really join their guild. Otherwise, their names would be exposed. But the guild badge was a forbidden item that couldn't be traded. Lu Ke couldn't take someone else's badge and give it to them. You should have confidence in the piracy industry. Lu Ke said. This can be done? Sword demon was surprised. Normal people can't do it. The structure and pattern are very complicated. There won't be any system assistance. Normal life profession players definitely can't do it. But the more normal people can't get it, the more business opportunities there are, right? Lu Ke said. Can Ing Chi and the others do it? Sword demon's mind wasn't slow. No, Sincerity can do it. Lu Ke said. Oh, Sword demon responded. He wasn't unfamiliar with this name. Sincerity Studio was also a famous online game studio in the industry. They had a huge business. The online store was especially standardized. They were enthusiastic, had a good attitude, and would answer any request. I've already talked to them, but this thing is completely handmade by players. It requires real time, so it won't be that fast. Lu Ke said. The price isn't low, right? Sword demon owed a lot of debt. When he talked about money, his tone couldn't help but drop a few notches. It's fine, it's the guild's expenses. Lu Ke said. That's not good. Sword demon's expression was serious. You're not in charge of this guild. Lu Ke laughed. Sword demon was speechless. Do you have any questions? Hurry up and ask. We're almost there. Lu Ke looked forward. This area had probably been surrounded by them as a training base. They were about to enter. I have one. Gu Fei said. Hurry up and say it. Lu Ke said. What's your guild called? Gu Fei asked. Silence. Extreme silence. His own guild's quests had been ruined by this guy time and time again. In the end, he didn't even know his own guild's name. What kind of sorrow was this? No one told me. Gu Fei's expression was very innocent. It wasn't that he didn't respect his opponent. It was that no one had mentioned this matter. And he didn't have much of an idea about guilds. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't think to ask about it. It's called Extreme Cold. Sword demon told him, and then changed the topic. Come, hurry up and go. This thing is really heavy. It wasn't just the name of the guild. He even remembered Water Depth's name incorrectly. Sword demon silently said in his heart. It was better not to let Lu Ke know about this. Extreme Cold. Don't remember it wrong. Lu Ke wanted to come up and pull Gu Fei's ear. No, my memory is very good. Gu Fei said. Sword demon blushed with shame for him. At the same time, he felt sorrow for Water Depth once again. After walking forward a bit, Lu Ke let go of the sack. It's about time. You two put on your clothes. Use a bit more strength. It's a bit strenuous. Sword demon, do you have any equipment that adds strength? Give me a few first. Gu Fei put on his camouflage clothes as he asked Sword demon. As an in-game expert, there was no way he would only have one set of equipment like Gu Fei. For PvP, for quests, for killing mobs, or for something else, Different missions had the most suitable equipment combinations, and a veteran like Sword Ghost naturally had the most suitable equipment combinations. Indeed, there were still some strength-imbued equipment that he didn't have with him, so he hurriedly gave them to Gu Fei. After Gu Fei put it on, carrying the sack became much easier. Lu Ke looked at their actions and seemed to be moved as she said to Sword Demon, "You've made a good friend again." Sword Demon smiled and didn't say anything. Although this was a bit of a misunderstanding, in the game, being able to exchange equipment with each other meant a deep trust. To be able to gain this kind of trust, it was naturally a good friend. As a normal person, even if you weren't a bad person who would blackmail others with equipment, it was very difficult to make others believe this. It wasn't easy to gain other people's trust. Gu Fei and Sword Demon had naturally done it. At least in the game, they were good friends who trusted each other. After walking a few more steps, they entered the training area of extreme cold. From time to time, people would emerge from the jungle with shifty eyes. They were probably used to Lu Ke bringing people over to carry things, so they didn't care after a glance. Gu Fei was also relieved. Imagine if he didn't get some strength equipment at this time, and continued to sway, he would naturally attract attention. With attention there would be attention, and with attention, there would be free time. After free time, anyway, the consequences were very serious. They're back. After walking for a while, a group of people emerged from behind a tree in front of them. Although they had just met not long ago, Gu Fei and Sword Demon still couldn't recognize them at a glance. They only judged that this person was water depth from the voice and posture. As a result, Gu Fei and Sword Demon were more confident in their disguises. Another 100 sets. Lu Ke gestured to Gu Fei and Sword Demon to put the bag on the ground. After the two left it, they stood silently to the side as if nothing had happened. Everyone's eyes were focused on the sacks on the ground. No one paid attention to the two of them. Not bad. Gu Fei private message Sword Demon. But where's water-breaking arrow? Sword Demon looked around but couldn't find him. He's beside water depth. What's with your eyes? Gu Fei replied. Ah. Sword Demon looked beside water depth. He walked out. Gu Fei reminded. Sword Demon sweated. I'm sorry, I really couldn't recognize him. Of course you can't recognize him from his face. Pay attention to his body shape. Gu Fei said. I don't have professional eyes. Sword Demon replied. Water-breaking arrow was indeed the one beside water depth. At this time he was busy opening 2 sacks. The 4th batch of clothes is here. Those without clothes, come and get them. Water depth said in the channel. It was as if a wild beast was moving its home. The entire forest was filled with noises. Countless birds were startled and heads were moving. This group of people that just came out had their faces smeared. They didn't wear clothes that were as psychedelic as their faces. They looked very out of place. After this group of people rushed up, they immediately rushed to snatch the equipment. It was clear that water depth didn't have any arrangements. Everyone wanted to get the clothes first. The scene was very chaotic. Water depth and the others had already experienced this before. At this time, they had already agilely hid to the side. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were completely unprepared. They were pushed around in the sea of people. It was extremely painful. The 100 sets of costumes were quickly snatched up, and the ground was immediately filled with people putting on their clothes. Gu Fei and the Sword Ghoul suddenly felt that they had come to a poverty-stricken area to help the poor. Look, there are so many people without clothes and pants. Snatch. In a daze, Gu Fei and Sword Demon suddenly heard Lu Ke pointing at them and talking to Water-Breaking Arrow. Old Broken Arrow, these two have been running around with me for a day. They haven't trained properly. I'll leave you behind to train them properly. This girl's got guts. Gu Fei was shocked. For a moment, he felt that Lu Ke was betraying them. This directly sent the two of them to Water-Breaking Arrow. Not to mention, Water-Breaking Arrow wanted to add them as friends. This would directly expose them. Although their IDs weren't directly above their heads, adding them as friends couldn't be hidden. Don't worry, I'll train them properly. The strength of the guild can't be separated from everyone's hard work. Water-Breaking Arrow expressed. You've worked hard. After speaking, Lu Ke waved at the two of them. You two train well." As she spoke, she winked at the two of them. Chapter 505. Gu Fei looked at Lu Ku in surprise. She turned around and casually greeted the two before leaving. He looked at Sword Demon next to her. Tragedy. Facing such a big face, Gu Fei couldn't tell if Sword Demon's expression was shocked or calm. Gu Fei had already experienced the horror of this kind of disguise. The face was extremely asymmetrical because of the strong colors. So many obvious emotions could be seen at a glance. On this face there was only one word: ferocious. Seeing that Broken Water Arrow was already coming towards the two, Gu Fei hurriedly sent a message to Sword Demon. "What if he wants to add us as friends?" "Of course, refuse." Sword Demon replied while looking at Gu Fei strangely. This question was so retarded. If he added them as friends, his ID would be exposed. Wouldn't that expose him? Refuse. Isn't that too suspicious? Why find a reason? Gu Fei said. "My friends list is full." Sword Demon replied. "Huh. Is that okay?" Gu Fei was surprised. Of course. The game has been open for so long. It's rare that the friends list isn't full. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei was feeling inferior. He didn't know that there was a limit to the friends list. Broken Water Arrow stood in front of them. This was the second time the three of them met in a short period of time. However, it should be a meeting of strangers. Broken Water Arrow. Broken Water Arrow stood in front of the two and introduced himself in a concise and powerful manner. In fact, there shouldn't be a need for this because everyone in Extreme Frost knew who he was. However, he would still do this. He just used this as an opening remark to signal Gu Fei and Sword Demon to introduce themselves. As early as when he proposed this plan, Gu Fei had already thought of the problem of using a fake ID. Drunken Flying, he had already made up a name using his real name and game ID. Just as he was about to say it, he was suddenly touched by Sword Demon. While Gu Fei was stunned, a message flew over. He opened it and saw that it was from Sword Demon. "Your name is Rice Soup." "What kind of stupid name is that?" By the time Gu Fei replied, the Sword Ghoul had already introduced himself. "White Sands. Rice Soup." Gu Fei didn't dare to reveal any flaws, so he could only follow the Sword Demon's instructions. "The name given by Young Ku." Sword Demon replied at this time. Gu Fei immediately understood. Fake name? How could he use a fake name to sneak into someone else's guild? Everyone's ID was clearly recorded in the guild list, and people could casually browse through it. Drunken Flight? What drunken flight? There's no drunken flight. Wouldn't he be exposed very quickly? He actually didn't think of this. Gu Fei was ashamed. He always ignored the simple rules of the game. As expected, he wasn't as good as Sword Demon and the others. And since this name was given by Lu Ku, it must be someone in the guild. Their class level should match. As for whether it was real or fake, Gu Fei guessed that the girl must have thought about it before choosing the name, so he didn't have to worry too much. "I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation." Broken Arrow had already extended his hand towards the two. Sword Demon held it first and Gu Fei followed. Broken Arrow's strength was still measured, and Gu Fei purposely added a bit more strength. He didn't know if Broken Arrow had the same judgment as him when they shook hands, but it was better to be careful. He couldn't be careless with these details. In addition, Gu Fei could recognize Broken Arrow from his body shape, but he believed that Broken Arrow wouldn't be able to recognize him like that. Broken Arrow's thick waist, legs, and neck were characteristics that normal people rarely had, and Gu Fei's body was the common kind of well-proportioned type. Only when he wore underwear would people notice that his body was abnormally lean and strong. This point, the mage robe was a very good cover. This lazy nightgown-like clothing wouldn't expose the body's muscles, not to mention that there was another robe on top of the robe. If it was the fighter's signature dochi suit, then it would be over. That equipment loved to show off the body's muscles, causing many male players who didn't have a good figure to choose a fighter to give up on picking up girls. The greetings ended here, and there was no unnecessary nonsense. "Follow me." Broken Arrow turned around and walked forward. This person is quite straightforward. Gu Fei actually quite admired this type of person who didn't talk much, but with one look he could tell that they were the capable type. Yeah, a bit like a soldier. Sword Demon said. I don't know, I've never dealt with a soldier before. Gu Fei said. Okay. I haven't either, I imagined it. Sword Demon was honest. Most normal people didn't have this kind of experience. The ones they had seen were mostly soldiers who had retired from the army for many years. Their edges had been ground away by life, and they were no different from normal people. Everyone's impression of this type of person could only come from movies and television. From this point of view, Broken Arrow was in line with the image of a resolute soldier. Every step he took gave people a feeling of cleanliness. Let's not talk anymore, let's keep up. Gu Fei and Sword Demon ended the private chat, and followed Broken Arrow's footsteps. Deeper in the jungle, this seemed to be the official training base of Deep Cold. From time to time, Gu Fei could feel a murderous aura beside him, often appearing and disappearing. Obviously, it was a glimpse of someone in the process of hurriedly running. From time to time, there was the sound of arrows whistling through the jungle. From the side of Broken Arrow's face, Gu Fei saw that every time there was this sound, he couldn't help but slightly frown. Even if his face was smeared, the frown could still be seen. Looks like he's not very satisfied with this training. This guy, does he really take this seriously? Gu Fei thought. Profession. Water-breaking Arrow suddenly stopped, and turned around to shout. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were startled by his sudden stop. Report your professions. Broken Arrow repeated. Mage. Thief. The two answered. Oh. After Water-breaking Arrow responded, his gaze once again swept over the two. The two of them had a guilty conscience, so it was inevitable that they would feel a little nervous and uncomfortable under such a focused gaze. Suddenly they heard Water-breaking Arrow say, You two aren't wearing badges? Gu Fei was surprised. He didn't expect this guy to notice so quickly. Just as he was about to argue, he heard Sword Demon already answer. We agree with you. If we want to better hide in this jungle, we must hide our badges. Well said. Water-breaking Arrow actually nodded approvingly. Gu Fei was very surprised because this Sword Demon really got into character quickly, but then he thought it was wrong. Sword Demon's words were obviously like he heard Broken Arrow's speech before. Of course this was impossible, so he immediately asked. Young Ka told me that if he has any questions about the badges, he should answer like this. This guy doesn't agree with wearing the badges in an obvious place. Gu Fei said. When did she say that? How come I don't know anything about it? Gu Fei asked. Private chat. It's safe. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei could understand this. Just like how the two of them were communicating under Broken Arrow's eyes, private chat was very safe. But why didn't she tell me? She doesn't have your friends list. Sword Demon said. Add. Her friends list is full. The excuse he just used to teach Gu Fei was quickly taught to Gu Fei. You two follow this group. Broken Arrow of course didn't know that Gu Fei and Sword Demon were secretly communicating, and had already started to deploy the two of them. With Broken Arrow's call, a few players came out of the jungle and came in front of Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Gu Fei immediately tensed up. He knew that Broken Arrow was a newbie who had just joined the guild not too long ago. It would be easy for the two of them to fool him, but if they were to mix with the other members of the guild, it would be troublesome. Even Lu Ke said that their guild was very harmonious and unfamiliar faces were very dangerous. Even though they had this method, they were all unfamiliar faces. However, their past relationships had not changed. If they were to meet face to face, what if these people in front of them were brothers who had gone on quests with rice soup and white sand, killed people together, drank with them, and drank with them? Wouldn't they see through them on the spot? Just as he was worrying, those brothers had already come up to size up the two of them and carefully asked, Who are you? Ever since the whole guild had this disguise, if they weren't extremely familiar with each other, they wouldn't recognize each other. Rice soup. Now that things had reached this point, Gu Fei could only brace himself and pray that these people weren't familiar with rice soup. White sand. Sword Demon also replied. Oh, the person on the other side called out, causing Gu Fei's heart to jump. Then he saw him clap his hands. So it's the two that joined recently. Welcome, welcome. When Gu Fei heard that he was pretending to be a newcomer that the other party wasn't familiar with, wasn't this a good opportunity to act freely? He was overjoyed, and when he looked at the sword ghost, he was also relieved. He sent a message to Gu Fei. That woman, it turns out that everything was arranged properly. Why didn't she tell me? She gave me a big fright. Be content. At least she told you a little. Gu Fei replied. Thinking about it, Sword Demon at least knew the fake name and how to explain the badge. If these two people went their separate ways, wouldn't he be done for? Ai is the leader of this group. You guys learn from him first. Water-breaking Arrow said. The Ai he was referring to was the one who clapped his hands to welcome them. Hello, hello. Gu Fei and Sword Demon immediately pretended to be humble and cautious newcomers. Ai is ranked 21st on the Archer leaderboard. A player beside Ai proudly announced. Amazing, amazing. Gu Fei and Sword Demon praised. Other than the president, Ai is the best trap technician in our guild. Another player promoted to his friend. Admirable. Gu Fei and Sword Demon continued to praise. Ha ha ha, what a bunch of ignorant brats. Suddenly, a voice came from the forest. Gu Fei, who had special training in listening to the wind, had already accurately looked in the direction of the voice, while the others were still looking around wondering who it was. At this time, a group of people came out from behind a tree. To be honest, there wasn't much to describe. Everyone knew what they were wearing. Yo, I was wondering who it was. So it's one of the 7 idlers of Yulin. Someone beside Ai looked at this group of people strangely. Sword Demon and Gu Fei looked at each other. Gu Fei sent a message to Sword Demon. You said it was a harmonious guild? It can't be helped. Where there are people, there will be conflicts. Sword Demon replied. Let's wait and see. Agreed. Butterfly Knot. The chapter number was wrong for 3 days in a row. What a tragedy. Why didn't anyone find out? Comrades, you disappoint me so much. Chapter 506. Extreme Cold's face had been smeared to the point where it was impossible to tell his age. But the new group that appeared from the bushes did look taller than the guys that Gu Fei and Sword Demon had joined. Coupled with the fact that the other side called him kid, Gu Fei could be sure that he and Sword Demon had joined a group of immature kids. And this group of guys from the adult group didn't have a small background. From the words of the kids, they were actually one of the 7 idlers. Although it was a group of jokes in the mouth of this player, the joke was only their temperament, not their strength. In terms of experience alone, they were second only to the top 10. If they had some powerful equipment or powerful skills in their hands, it was not impossible to surpass the top 10. After all, the level of experience didn't affect strength. Everyone was at the same level. Brother you this 7 idlers, who's in the position of Archer? Sword Demon had already asked in the mercenary channel. Ginkgo T Lurker. Why is it from Forest Shade City? Did you guys bump into him? Brother you replied. Kill him. Yutian Shenming shouted. This guy wished that all the archers above level 40 would die, and he would be the only one left. In front of us. Sword Demon ignored Yutian Shenming. After replying to Brother Yu, he and Gu Fei continued to quietly watch the situation in front of them. Gu Fei counted the number of people. The adult group led by Ginkgo T consisted of a total of 12 people. It seemed to be a complete team. And the young kids group led by Ai, including the newly joined Gu Fei and Sword Demon, was only 8 people. But when it came to challenging, they probably wouldn't count the newly joined Gu Fei and Sword Demon as brothers in the same trench, so there were 6 people. Young people had always been fearless. Kid, let me teach you a lesson and let you understand what a real trap technician is. Ginkgo T said as he walked at the front of the group. Ai snorted disdainfully. Humph, with just you? Although he was ranked 21st among the archers, the principle was the same. Everyone was on the same level, and this ranking did not represent strength. He was not afraid of Ginkgo T, which was ranked 10 places higher than him. The two of them took a few more steps forward and stood opposite each other. There's no need to say more about the rules, right? Ginkgo T said. Of course. A smiled. Gu Fei and the Sword Demon were at a loss. Why are you looking at me? Ask your old friend. Gu Fei messaged Sword Demon. Sword Demon sent a message to Lu Ke. There are two lurkers who seem to be competing. Everyone knows the rules. What rules do you have? Within a certain range, the first to fall into the trap loses within the agreed time. If no one falls into the trap, then the one who gets hit by the most arrows loses. Lu Ke replied as if she was not unfamiliar with it. This is very dangerous. The parallel world did not provide a stage for players to train and learn from each other. Fighting was PK, and if there was death, there would be PK points. So it was not easy for two friends to practice PK skills. After all, the damage in the game had a minimum and a maximum. Experts like Gu Fei could control it, but ordinary people relied on luck. As for critical hits, fatal attacks, and other attacks that had a high probability of appearing, even Gu Fei could not control them. The accidents were obvious. No, they will use the lowest damage equipment. Lu Ke said. There are all kinds of attribute points on the equipment, and it's not as simple as just affecting the damage. Different equipment has different attributes, and there are different ways to play. If you can't use the equipment that you most often configure, what's the point of practicing? Sword Demon said. Practice? Are you kidding me? Do those brats look like they're practicing? They quarrel all day to fight over who is strong and who is weak. It's so annoying. Which two are they now? Lu Ke asked. Ginkoti. Sword Demon told her. Oh. Lu Ke did not comment again. Sword Demon then relayed Lu Ke's words to Gu Fei. At this time, the two people in the field after someone came out of nowhere and shouted, "Start!" They each buried their heads and rolled, disappearing into the grass. As for the others who were watching the battle, they all consciously stepped back and skillfully left a blank space for the two of them. The forest was quiet. Occasionally, there were sounds, but most of them came from a distance. In the place that could be seen, there would occasionally be a slight sound of grass rubbing against each other, but it was extremely soft. It was hard to tell if someone was moving, or if it was just a gust of wind passing by. Even if Gu Fei had the ability to feel murderous intent, he could not completely grasp the movements of the two people at this time. Why would the two people in the duel look at him? Sai, what's the point of doing this? Just directly attack. Gu Fei really had no love for this kind of duel. On the other hand, the Sword Ghost was different. He had researched all of the in-game combat styles. At this time, his expression was focused. There was clearly no one in front of him, but he watched very seriously. If there was even the slightest movement, he would immediately look around to see if there was any change. At this moment, this guy was probably simulating in his heart how he would deal with it if he were in this situation. This kind of duel could be considered a new experience. Only the lurkers in Forest Shade City, who trained and fought under such conditions for a long time, could develop such a unique fighting style. If it were any other main city, even if two lurkers fought, it would not be like this. First, there was no such geographical conditions. Second, there was no such habit. Third, there really was no such skill. It had already been 3 minutes, and the two people in the duel were nowhere to be seen. No one knew what they had done in these 3 minutes, whether they had fought, whether they had been injured. No one knew. No one knew anything. There was only the forest, the grass, and a circle of idiotic players in front of them. Whoosh! There was finally a sound in the circle. This sound was not sudden for the audience at all, because everyone had been waiting for a long time, and was fully mentally prepared. Finally. This state was called finally. The sound of the arrow rang out in silence. Gu Fei, who was experienced in listening to sounds, locked his gaze in one direction with this sound. And Sword Demon, who understood Gu Fei, followed Gu Fei's gaze and locked his gaze in one direction. So his gaze quickly collided with a tree. Sword Demon cursed and quickly adjusted his position to stand next to Gu Fei. The forest was like this. The two were a few steps apart, and their vision was completely different. Gu Fei saw the change in the battle situation, while Sword Demon saw a tree. There. Sword Demon also whispered to Gu Fei to confirm. Originally, but maybe he's already left, Gu Fei said. Although he didn't see any special movements, There hadn't been any big movements in the past 3 minutes, but it was impossible that he didn't move. This arrow didn't react at all, Sword Demon said. The circle was quiet again at this time. It should be a test, but the opponent didn't fall for it, Gu Fei analyzed. Then didn't he expose himself instead? Sword Demon said. The reason was very simple. The guy who looked for someone with a flashlight first exposed himself first. I don't think so, Gu Fei said. Why? Sword Demon asked. Because I didn't find any traces of him. It sounded quite arrogant, but there was a reason behind it. In fact, whether it was the duelists in the field or the spectators like Gu Fei, everyone saw and heard the same. The spectators who were more free and unrestrained didn't find anything, let alone the duelists who were in the middle of the battle and had to make sure to hide themselves first. If it were me, what would I do? Everyone probably couldn't help but think of this question. After Sword Demon thought about it, he couldn't help but ask Gu Fei again. Jump out, lure the opponent out, and then go over and kill him, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon could only ignore this kind of inhuman answer that was too strong and didn't put the opponent in his eyes at all. Both sides were evenly matched, carefully testing each other and looking for loopholes. Perhaps this was the best way. And that was exactly what these two fellows were doing. Sword Demon thought so. So after that arrow, another 2 minutes passed, during which 2 more arrows were released, but there was still no movement. The audience didn't even know if the arrows were shot by the same person. What's the time? Did they say it? Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. In his memory, the other said, no need to say the rules, and then started. Didn't they say to set a time? Why didn't they set a time? They didn't say it. Could it be that these two people often fight, and it's a convention? Sword Demon guessed. If there was a unified time rule, Lu Ke would have told him just now. Gu Fei could only mutter to himself. How long are they going to fight? While muttering, he glanced at the water-breaking arrow over there. Gu Fei still paid attention to this guy's actions from time to time, but the water-breaking arrow was like an ordinary audience, nothing particularly noteworthy. As for Sword Demon, he forgot about this matter at this time and focused on watching the duel. Obviously, Sword Demon wasn't a player who was very enthusiastic about quests. Quests were just a way for him to improve himself. And this kind of rare duel in front of him was very helpful for him to improve his combat experience. Sword Demon was more interested in this than in the daily quests. And at this time, the referee who announced the start of the battle suddenly shouted, "Last 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. Everyone suddenly began to shout the countdown, and the atmosphere suddenly became lively. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were a bit confused. It ended just like that? Was the outcome already decided? Were these two really two amateurs and couldn't see anything? 6, 5, 4, 3. Just as everyone shouted 3 in unison, there was suddenly a series of sounds that sounded like some kind of mechanism jumping in the field. It was continuous and rapid. With the center of the field as the core, unknown things scattered around with the sound. What is this? Sword Demon shouted in surprise. There was already something flying in front of them. Gu Fei put his sword in his pocket and pulled it out, but he touched nothing. At this time he was wearing camouflage outside, but the equipment pocket was inside. Quick dodge. In a hurry, Gu Fei used a difficult method and pushed Sword Demon, and the two flew to the ground. What is this? There was a cry of surprise. Chapter 507. No one had Gu Fei's reflexes and skills. All the players who were targeted by the projectiles were hit. Except for one person, Broken Arrow. Sure enough, he had some skill. The moment Gu Fei pounced, he didn't let go of this opportunity to observe Broken Arrow. He saw Broken Arrow dodge the projectile with a sidestep. If it wasn't to save Sword Demon, Gu Fei's dodging method would probably be the same as his. At the same time, Broken Arrow's gaze fell on the two of them. Although they fell to the ground awkwardly, they were the only two players in the field who weren't hit by the attack. Don't panic, this attack doesn't do any damage. At this time, a person in the bushes slowly stood up and looked at Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Although the messy face made it impossible to read his expression, just from his tone, everyone could hear that he was relaxed. One could imagine the kind and warm smile on his face, or rather, A pretentious smile Ginkgo. There was a clear difference between his voice and Ai's. It was obvious it was him. Just as he had said, the damage dealt by this attack was so light that it only tickled the nerves of the players who had been hit. Meanwhile, Gu Fei and the sword ghost, who had collapsed to the ground, were seen as symbols of excessive panic. Many players looked at them with disdain. Only the water-breaking arrow looked at the two with a different gaze than before. "Ai, are you still not coming out?" Ginkgo continued to shout in a relaxed tone. The countdown stopped because of this attack, but 3 seconds had already passed and the duel was over. If no one was hit by the trap, it was time to count who had been hit by the most arrows. And there didn't seem to be much suspense. In the whole duel, there were only 3 arrows, and everyone saw that the arrows missed. Ginkgo definitely wasn't hit by the arrows, and the last wave of strange attacks was clearly released by Ginkgo. The audience watching from the outside circle couldn't dodge it, let alone Ai who was closer to the circle. As expected, Ai stood up silently in the midst of the shouts, not saying a word. At this time, if he could admire his opponent's expression, it would undoubtedly be a very enjoyable moment. Unfortunately, the makeup was a very good camouflage, and Ginkgo couldn't enjoy this pleasure. He probably felt that it wasn't an orgasm enough. In the end, he didn't say much and simply said, "There's always a higher mountain. Take care." Ai continued to remain silent. It was clear that this loss had made him quite disheartened. His little brothers at this moment also looked as if they had been struck by frost. All of them lowered their heads in silence. To everyone's surprise, including Gu Fei, the sword demon suddenly spoke. "Wait." Ginkgo turned around and saw that it was Sword Demon. His face twitched. He was probably smiling, but at this moment, it looked like he was having a cramp. After twitching, he said politely, "Brother, you weren't hurt just now, right? Sorry about that." "What skill was that?" Sword Demon asked. "I don't think I need to tell you about this, do I?" Ginkgo said disapprovingly. When it came to this kind of unfamiliar skill, players usually had 2 attitudes. One was to show off, to announce the powerful effects, data, and uses of the skill to the world, arousing the envy and worship of others. The other was to hide it. Although they knew how to use it, they didn't want others to know too much about their skill, so they wouldn't reveal the data and effects of the skill. Ginkgo's attitude right now was clearly the latter. And Sword Demon was an old player, so he should understand this very well. When it came to the first type of person, even if you didn't ask, they would still brag. When it came to the second type, even if you asked, they wouldn't say. So Sword Demon asked a question that shouldn't have been asked by an old player like him. The way he looked at Ginkgo was like looking at an ignorant newbie. "I don't want to ask too much, but at the very least, your skill should be a trap, right?" Sword Demon said. "I don't need to tell you about this, right?" Ginkgo said. "Not to me, but to this duel. If it's a trap skill, then may I ask how you activated it? Can you demonstrate it in front of everyone?" Sword Demon said. Ginkgo fell silent. "Did you step into the trap yourself and activate its mechanism?" Sword Demon asked aggressively. There was an uproar. Even Ai suddenly came to his senses. He looked at Ginkgo and said, "You cheated." "Cheated? What cheated? Who said I couldn't step into my own trap?" Ginkgo retorted. "You admit it? That means you fell into the trap first, so you lost." Ai suddenly became spirited. "TSK, I stepped into my own trap, not yours. What are you so proud of?" Ginkgo said. "The rules only said the first to step into the trap loses. It didn't say who did it." Ai said. "Nonsense, that's because there's no need to say it. Who would step into their own trap? Do they have a bruise on their head?" Ginkgo said loudly. The forest suddenly fell silent. After a while, there was a burst of laughter. Especially Ai's group. Their laughter was especially loud. And Ginkgo's group was very embarrassed. Ginkgo just wanted to say stepping into your own trap doesn't count. This was an axiom that everyone understood. In the end, he was too anxious and made a mistake. Sword Demon didn't laugh. He looked at Ginkgo and continued. "According to what you're saying, stepping into your own trap doesn't count. That's based on the premise that no one would step into their own trap. Then you stepped into your own trap, so it's also against the rules. Humph. The loser always has a lot of excuses. Ginkgo T said disdainfully. The loser is you. Ai shouted. You look very unconvinced. If you're not convinced, then let's fight again. What's with all this nonsense? Ginkgo T said with disdain. Come on, I'm not afraid of you. Ai's voice was very loud. Gu Fei could only facepalm on the side. Young people, they really didn't know much about the world. They even fell for such a simple provocation. Although Ginkgo T didn't admit it verbally, everyone knew who won and lost. For someone like Ginkgo T who could still shamelessly argue after being exposed, it was obvious that he was a dead pig. He wasn't afraid of boiling water. Even if Gong Zheng won against him, he would have 10 million reasons to deal with him. It was extremely difficult to convince this kind of person. Moreover, in those duels just now, although Ginkgo T cheated, Ai didn't seem to have any powerful means of winning. If he rashly agreed to fight Ginkgo T again, he was a classic example of someone who didn't use his brain. Forget it. Gu Fei stepped forward and stopped Ai, who was about to enter the ring again. Oh, are you afraid? Ginkgo T chuckled. Don't stop me. This kind of guy, I have to make him lose wholeheartedly. Ai was angry. Such words should be said by someone with strength. Be honest. Are you 100% confident in beating him? Gu Fei said. Ai fell silent. If he was confident, he would have won just now. He wouldn't have given Ginkgo T the chance to cheat in the last 3 seconds. If you don't even have this kind of confidence, how can you make him lose wholeheartedly? Gu Fei asked Ai. Ai fell silent. Alright, let's go. Gu Fei gestured for Ai to return to his companions. Ai walked in a daze, as if he was still thinking about Gu Fei's words. However, behind him, Gu Fei had already rolled up his sleeves and said to Ginkgo T, Come, let me make you lose wholeheartedly. Fuck. Everyone booed and jeered. Even Sword Demon felt that Gu Fei was too shameless. Ginkgo T laughed wildly. Kid, you're very arrogant. Gu Fei smiled. You'll know after the fight that I'm not arrogant. It's just the truth. After saying that, he untied his camouflage uniform and reached into his inner pocket to take out his sword. In the end, he heard a deep voice behind him. Enough. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. There was only one person in that direction. Water-breaking arrow. This kind of duel is meaningless. Water-breaking arrow said. How is it meaningless? It's to improve one's PK level, Ginkgo T said. What's the use of this level? On the battlefield, no one will give you such a large space for you to fight. On the battlefield, you won't only have one enemy. On the battlefield, every inch of land can be hidden with danger. Your so-called duel is just a boring game. If you want to win in the future city battles, you'd better think about how to use your individual abilities in a chaotic situation to win the overall victory. How can something like an individual ranking help in city battles? Water-breaking arrow said. Let's go. Ginkgo T didn't comment on water-breaking arrow's words. He led his team away. As for Ai's group, they were more respectful towards water-breaking arrow. Gu Fei unexpectedly didn't feel any regret towards the fight being ruined. From the two groups' attitudes towards water-breaking arrow, he felt that there was something interesting. Did you see that? Looking at water-breaking arrow's departing figure, Gu Fei said to Sword Demon. What do you mean? Sword Demon asked. Ginkgo T, and those guys don't seem to think much of water-breaking arrow, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon obviously saw this. Although water-breaking arrow's words are reasonable, I don't agree with his methods. This is just a game. Even if it's a guild leader, he wouldn't speak so forcefully. We should all be friends, brothers, and be on equal footing. His attitude is really like a boss lecturing his employees. But there are quite a few guild leaders who are this forceful. Gu Fei said. Win people by virtue, win people by reason. As long as your words are right and your actions are righteous, even if your tone is harsh, there will still be many people who will agree. I'm just saying that I don't really like this kind of method. Sword Demon said. Of course, you're not the only one who doesn't like it. Look at Ginkgo T, they really don't like it. Gu Fei said. It seems so. Sword Demon said. Then look at Water Depth's personality. What kind of guild leader would he be? Gu Fei asked. Of course it's the kind I'm talking about. Sword Demon said. Birds of a feather flock together. If Water Depth is this kind of leader, then the guild members he gathered, of course most of them agree with his leadership style. But suddenly, there's a leader with a completely different style intervening and giving strong commands. Don't you think everyone will feel very unhappy? Gu Fei said. What are you trying to say? Sword Demon suddenly felt a little frightened. Butterfly knot. What we're going to discuss next is about the leader, cough. Chapter 508. How could you not know what I'm talking about? Gu Fei asked. I understand what you mean. Breaking Water Arrow entering the guild with this kind of attitude is to deliberately destroy the harmonious atmosphere in Water Depth, right? Sword Demon said. Yeah, what do you think? Gu Fei said. My opinion. Sword Demon hesitated for a moment before saying. Isn't your mentality too dark? It's just a game, there's no need to do so much, right? No. Gu Fei shook his head and insisted on his opinion. Your thinking is too old-fashioned. This game is no longer the ordinary game you guys used to play. When I chatted with Lu Ke before, she already mentioned that there are many specialized businesses, studios and the like that even looking for specialized talents to do it. This kind of thing. You've never played in the games you've played before, right? This is true. Sword Demon nodded. The activity of the studio shows the benefits that exist in the game. You still have the mentality of a normal player who only wants to have fun in the game, but if someone comes in to seek benefits, then there's nothing they can't do. Don't forget, in this world there are no laws. Gu Fei said. The more you say, the more mysterious it is. Sword Demon said. Let's wait and see. There are already signs of it. I feel that in this game, the strongest guild won't be an organization like before, but definitely supported by a studio and other interest groups, relying on benefits to win over people's hearts. Gu Fei said. What benefits to win over people's hearts? Sword Demon was a bit confused. Wages, big bro. Gu Fei said. Wages? You mean in the future the guild will be like a real company? Sword Demon said. Not everyone is like this, but the strongest, I think it will be like this. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon thought. He couldn't figure out if Gu Fei's thinking was too naive or too trendy. Fan Tang Bai Sha. Ai and the others came over to greet them. Thank you for just now, Ai said. Sword Demon and Gu Fei had come out one after another just now. Speaking of which, they were on Ai's side. Everyone could see this. Ai came over to express his gratitude. Haha, it's nothing, the two of them said. You two aren't spies? Ai asked. He had probably already secretly appraised them, so he asked out of politeness. Assassin. Lightning Mage. The two of them introduced themselves. That Ginkgo tea guy, I'll teach him a lesson next time, Ai said. He had to give an explanation for the previous battle. We're all brothers. What's the point? Let's just play around. Sword Demon was really a good brother. Not only did he act as a spy, but he also helped Water Depths maintain the harmony of the guild. Ai and the others didn't comment. After a moment of silence, they changed the topic and introduced everyone in their group to Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Apart from Gu Fei and Sword Demon, the six of them were all spies. As expected, they were good friends who fought together, picked up girls and farmed monsters. Because Gu Fei and Sword Demon had spoken up for justice in the previous duel, they clearly expressed that they didn't mind the two of them joining their group. Haha, you guys get to know each other better. I'll be leaving first, Gu Fei said to the others. Where are you going? Ai and the others were surprised. Now that there was nothing else to do, they were preparing to train the two new members in jungle combat skills and teamwork. I'm going offline to sleep. I still have work tomorrow. Gu Fei waved at everyone and left. Ai and the others watched him leave as if they were looking at a monster. It wasn't uncommon for office workers to play games, but because office workers didn't have much free time to play games, they would try to play as much as possible at night. It was extremely rare for office workers to go offline so early. Are you two friends? Ai and the others asked Sword Demon. Yes, Sword Demon replied. When does he come every day? Everyone asked. Sword Demon was too embarrassed to answer. The amount of time Gufei spent online every day was a disgrace to their group. I'm going offline first. You stay and build a relationship with them. If there's a chance, find out about the water-breaking arrow, Gufei messaged Sword Demon. Okay. Sword Demon was a man of few words. After Gufei left, no one paid attention to him anymore. Ai quickly began to teach Sword Demon how to cooperate with their group. Speaking of which, in the duel just now, Sword Demon had seen through Ginkgo T's trick, so he had a better impression of Ai. Let me tell you about our skills first. Ai said to Sword Demon, the 6 of us are equipped with special equipment to extend the effect of the traps, increase the power, and increase the number of traps. The 6 of us have a total of 22 traps. The 5 of them have level 40 hunting traps. I can put 2-foot traps with damage. What trap? Sword Demon had never heard of it. Foot trap, Ai said as he wrote 2 words on the ground. Besides damage, are there any special effects? Sword Demon asked. It can reduce the opponent's movement speed by 100% for 5 seconds, Ai explained. Very strong. It's much stronger than the freezing effect of water spells, Sword Demon said. But it only reduces the movement speed. It doesn't affect the attack, Ai said. Well, I understand. Sword Demon nodded. Come on, everyone get up. Let's set up our most common trap array and show it to Shasha. Ai directed the other 5 to move. Shasha. The sword ghost almost threw up while hugging the tree. This bunch of brats, don't randomly give people nicknames. The 6 of them immediately got to work, setting up traps everywhere. After Ai was the first to finish setting up the traps, he returned to Sword Ghost's side and began to explain to him how large the range of the trap formation was, which areas were controlled, which areas were empty, which areas were filled with traps, where they would hide, where they would launch their attacks, how to make the next step, and so on. Sword Demon listened and nodded. This was a level of skill that he had never touched on before. Then what should I do? Sword Demon couldn't help but feel a little immersed. Of course you already know where it's safe to stand in this trap array, but safety doesn't mean you can stand anywhere you want, you know? Ai said. I know, my position also has to match your position outside the circle, so that it doesn't affect your line of sight and attack angle. Sword Demon's perception was of course excellent, causing Ai to praise Sword Demon's awareness. Although there are many changes in the arrangement of the trap array, just like the one we're setting up now, we have some established plans and numbered them. This set, we call it version C. When you hear version C, you should know the position of each trap. But we, who are lying in ambush on the periphery, will choose different positions depending on the terrain or the situation. This kind of position selection, not only do we have to learn, you also need to master it. Because every time, you can only receive the coordinates provided by your teammates. You need to use your eyes to determine which tree your teammates will be hiding under, or in which bushes. This requires a certain understanding of your teammates' habits, and only then can you quickly make accurate judgments. This way, we can become the most tacit team. Ai said. That makes sense. Sword Demon was a little surprised, because this kind of speech really didn't sound like something a kid who could be easily provoked would say. Haha, it's all taught by Old Broken, Ai said. Speaking of which, it's a bit of a waste for Old Broken to become a marksman. I think his trap awareness and skills are probably better than even guild leader Deepwater. One of the 6 said. Yeah. We played with these trap arrays for a long time before we came up with them, but Old Broken just made some random adjustments to make them more powerful. Especially the big, medium, small, and 3 sets of A, B, C. They're really... I don't have words to describe them. Another said. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Old Broken, it's water-breaking arrow, right? I heard that he hasn't been in the guild for long, right? The topic shifted to water-breaking arrow on its own. Sword Demon really didn't want to refuse. If he didn't ask about it, he would be letting down his painstaking makeup. Yeah, it hasn't been that long. We don't know the specifics, but it's definitely a bit earlier than you and Soup, Ai said. Oh, after joining the guild these past few days, he's been the most talked about. Sword Demon said. Yeah, just from the few sets of trap arrays he designed, we know he's not an ordinary person. Ai said. Such a powerful person. Was he someone from Forest Shade City? Why haven't I heard of him? Sword Demon expressed his doubts. I haven't heard of him either. Everyone was confused. What's so strange about it? Everyone has interacted with Old Broken. He's obviously not the type of person who likes to show off. Do you think he's that idiot Ginkgo? Our guild is really lucky to be able to meet this kind of person and pull him into the guild. Ai said. In this whatever city battle, no one will be our opponent. I just don't know when it will start. I can't wait. It's good to open it later. Let's practice more and have a greater chance. Yes. By the way, Shasha, let's add each other as friends. In this jungle battle, sometimes we need some private chat. Ai suddenly said. This was naturally something Sword Demon wouldn't agree to even if he was beaten to death. He quickly said, I'm really sorry, my friends list is full. Many of them were added after joining the guild in the past few days. They're all brothers in the guild. I'm really sorry to delete them right after adding them. Let's wait a few more days. When I see that there's no contact, I'll delete them and add all of us. Oh, they all expressed their understanding. Then you should quickly familiarize yourself with these sets of trap arrays that we often use. Of course. Sword Demon wiped his sweat. He suddenly realized that when needed, everyone could become very treacherous. Lying was really a human instinct. He just opened his mouth and after he finished speaking, he found that, TSK, it was perfect and flawless. Damn, why am I being narcissistic? Am I infected? Chapter 509. For the entire night, Sword Demon followed Ai and the others through the forest, familiarizing himself with the traps, paying attention to his own movements, and paying attention to the habits of Ai and the others. Even though Ai's words were clear and logical, after a night of understanding, Sword Demon realized that they were just talking. Flawless teamwork was not something that could be practiced overnight. However, the traps on the ground weren't undeserved. Because Sword Demon had to be in the middle of them to move, he had a deep understanding of them. It seems like it's morning already. After a night, Ai walked out from behind a tree while stretching. The morning he was talking about was the morning in real life. For all-nighters like them, the time others woke up was usually the time they got off work. Sword Demon was also a member of this clan. He looked at the time and felt that it was about time to go offline. Everyone came out of hiding and started to organize their night's harvest. Although it was called training, it wasn't as simple as setting up traps in the forest. In fact, everyone just added some complicated tricks to the process of killing monsters and leveling up. After a night, there were still quite a few scattered harvests. However, for a top-tier expert like Sword Demon, the efficiency of this night's leveling was quite average. Moreover, Sword Demon didn't come here to level. It was a pity that Broken Arrow didn't show up again that night. From the mouths of Ai and the others, he could only see their admiration for Broken Arrow. As a result, it seemed that Gu Fei's deduction was more and more reliable. However, for Sword Demon, who had been immersed in the game for too long, he still felt that Gu Fei's avant-garde thinking was a bit inconceivable. Shasha, aren't you going to go offline? Ai and the others had finished packing up and came over to greet Sword Demon. Yes. Put away your clothes. Don't wipe your face. Just cover it up. It'll be maintained when you go offline, Ai told Sword Demon. I know. Sword Demon nodded. How could Sword Demon not understand these basic settings? The group left the forest together. After staying in the dark forest for nearly 10 hours, the Sword Demon felt that the sunlight was particularly dazzling. As for Ai and the others, they were clearly used to this kind of situation. They skillfully covered their eyes with their hands and continued chatting as if nothing had happened. The Sword Demon imitated them and looked around again. The edge of the forest was really lively at this time, and everyone looked the same. They put their hands on their eyes and hurried along like Goku. The Forest Shade players were already used to it, but Sword Demon, a foreigner, really found it funny. Together with Ai and the others, I headed to the resurrection point. After agreeing on a time to meet up, everyone logged off together. In the evening, Gu Fei always came online in the evening, and at this time, Sword Demon had already been in the forest with Ai's group for a few hours. Ordinary leveling efficiency was meaningless to Sword Demon. More importantly, he could no longer get any information about the water-breaking arrow. Of course, Sword Demon couldn't be comfortable. But the honest Sword Demon played his role as White Sand so faithfully. What made him depressed was Gu Fei, who played the role of Rice Soup. As an actor, this guy didn't think about how to play his role well. Instead, he directly replaced the role with his own style. This was a bit too free and easy. Since he went offline last night, he hadn't shown up since. Ai and the others weren't suspicious, but they already had a lot of opinions. In their opinion, since this comrade Rice Soup was an office worker, he shouldn't be assigned with them who could stay up all night. With so much time to get used to each other, wouldn't he be a burden to everyone when the time came? When will Rice Soup be served? Ai and the others had repeatedly asked this question countless times. It should be soon. It should be served then? Strange, why hasn't it been served yet? Sword Demon laughed and covered for Gu Fei. Finally, Gu Fei came online, but before he could send a message urging him to come over, he received a message from Gu Fei. How is it? Did you find out anything? After you went offline, I haven't seen the water-breaking arrow again. Sword Demon replied helplessly. Oh, then what about other people? For example, those kids. Gu Fei said. They have great respect for the water-breaking arrow. In addition, I've seen the traps designed by the water-breaking arrow. They really do have some skill. Sword Demon said. Then it seems that we still don't have an answer about whether or not we can cut the water-breaking arrow today. Gu Fei said. This is indeed a problem that requires further research, the Sword Demon replied. You're online for a long time every day, right? You haven't found anything after so long? What are you doing? Are you going to play with those kids? Gu Fei said. To be honest, yes. What's worse is that I'm playing with them now. Sword Demon said in pain. Why don't you join a water-deep guild? Gu Fei said. Okay, I won't joke around anymore. Regarding the water-breaking arrow, I don't think I can get anything useful from these people. If I want to understand him, I can only approach him personally. Sword Demon said. Okay, find him, follow him, and see what he's busy with. Gu Fei said. Follow him? Sword Demon felt it was a bit wretched. What else can I do? Walk in front of him and ask. Hey brother, are you a good person or a bad person? Is that so? Gu Fei said. Following this person should be difficult, right? Will he be like you and be able to feel murderous intent? Sword Demon said. It won't be a problem if the distance is a bit further. Gu Fei said. How far? Sword Demon asked. 10 meters should be fine. Gu Fei said. Okay, then there's another problem. Where are we going to find the water-breaking arrow? Sword Demon said. Find your old friend. Let her find an excuse to ask around. She can shout in the guild channel, and won't be able to find out where the water-breaking arrow is? As long as he's with a Water-Deep guild member. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon immediately sent a message to Lu Kuo, and asked her to find out where the water-breaking arrow was. That's easy. Lu Kuo replied. Speaking of which, you guys have been busy all day, right? Did you notice anything? Sword Demon felt that the word you guys was extremely harsh. He was the only one who had been busy all day. Gu Fei went to the group and watched a duel that lasted for 5 minutes without seeing anything. Then after showing off a bit, he floated away, leaving him alone with a group of little brats until now. What was even worse was that after answering Lu Kuo's question, Sword Demon discovered that his messing around really didn't have any results. His answer to Lu Kuo was actually all the deductions that Gu Fei had made yesterday. This guy's idea is quite bold. Sword Demon was an honest person. When he told Lu Kuo these things, he didn't forget to tell her that this was the deduction that Gu Fei made after witnessing the water-breaking arrow's behavior. Then I interacted with that group of little brats called Ai for a night, and found out that they really admired the water-breaking arrow. Sword Demon didn't want to admit that he had been busy all night, so he concluded something that he felt was meaningful. But it was obvious that his night was destined to be a tragedy. After receiving this message, Lu Ku replied, "You discovered this after one night?" Sword Demon. "To be honest, I didn't think this was suitable for you from the beginning." Lu Ku said. Sword Demon. "But that guy's deduction was reasonable." Lu Ku said. "Oh. You don't form a guild now, so you may not be aware of some guild matters." Lu Ku said, "Let's take the upcoming city war as an example. What kind of position will the final victor have in the main city? What practical benefits will there be? These haven't been officially announced yet, but some studios have already begun to move. Don't you understand the situation of studios? Of the larger companies, which one of them didn't have some connections to the game company? When we played Eternal Legend, didn't you find out that Tungfei Studio was sweeping up a lot of Gulen Spring in the market, and then told us that this thing would definitely rise in price and suggested that we buy it if we could? Later, after the expansion pack was updated, Gulen Spring was one of the main raw materials in the production of equipment, food, and medicine. The price skyrocketed, and everyone took the opportunity to make a fortune. Now the guilds are the same. In the past, the studio operated a guild, but it was a commodity that was sold to others whenever there was a chance. Now they seem to have the idea of forming their own guilds. I think it's because of this city war. The winner of this city war, even if there aren't many vested interests, will definitely have the follow-up benefits of sustainable development. You have learned a lot. Sword Demon listened, and was a little speechless. Our guild is now the most powerful in Shady Forest City. It can be said that we are the biggest obstacle for them to win the city war. If the studio is meddling, I won't be surprised by any means, Lu Ku said. Your current thoughts are quite intense. I need to digest them. I think we should meet up. You and Qianli talk together. Your views are more similar, Sword Demon said. Hey, don't tell me you've really become so slow? This game really isn't the same as before, Lu Ku said. I know, I've gradually felt the same recently. I won't send it for now. Tell us a place to meet and talk. Sword Demon replied and told Ai and the others that he had something to do and had to leave. Then he informed Gu Fei to prepare to meet up with Lu Ku. What, Boss Lu has new instructions? Gu Fei smiled. He originally came for the Sword Demon's mission, but now he had the intention of helping Lu Ku remove the hidden danger of the guild. She agrees with your deduction, Sword Demon said. Really? What does she think? Gu Fei asked. You'll know in a moment. In a thatched hut in the city, a woman and two men sneaked in one after another. It was Lu Ku, Gu Fei, and Sword Demon. This thatched hut was also Lu Ku's private property. Talking in such a place was undoubtedly as safe as sending messages. Chapter 510. Hi. The three of them greeted each other. There's no place to sit? Gu Fei looked around. The layout of the room was so simple that there was nothing. Sit. Can't we sit on the floor? Lu Ku tapped the floor with her foot. Gu Fei obviously didn't have to sit, but he felt that it was a bit funny and unnatural to specially come to this place with the three of them standing in a triangle to discuss things. But seeing that the two of them didn't care, he didn't say anything more. He casually took a pose against the wall and went straight to the point. Breaking water arrow is a bit interesting. Sword Demon has already told me what you mean, Lu Ku said. What do you think? Gu Fei asked. Breaking water arrow has skill and character. There are many people in the guild who admire him. This isn't a secret. But you have that kind of doubt. TSK, your mind is very dark, Lu Ku said. Hey, you two are worthy of being old friends, Gu Fei said. Of course, Lu Ku said. I have to make it clear that this person has become the assassination target of Sword Demon's daily mission. And I am speculating from the perspective of the game's operation. I don't think the system will give players a mission for no reason that they must PK to complete. In view of the fact that I was in a very similar mission before, PK was against a guy who had killed more than 1,600 players. So regarding the target of Sword Demon's mission, I am not stingy in guessing from the most malicious angle. Whether it is breaking water arrow or not, this isn't the key, Gu Fei said. Then you guys have also met Breaking Water Arrow face to face. What impressions do you have? Luku asked. Neck, waist, and thighs are thick. Typical strength-type player. In combat, he is probably good at nimble footwork. His punches have explosive power, and his head is strong. Gu Fei said. What is he talking about? Luku asked Sword Demon. Professional judgment. Sword Demon said. Too professional. But these don't seem to be the key. The key is his intentions. I wonder if he really has some ulterior motive for being so well-liked. Luka said. It's not that easy to find out. We have to follow and observe. Gu Fei said. Follow? Wow, you're so wretched. Luku exclaimed. This was Sword Demon's idea. Gu Fei said. You've learned bad things. Luka looked at Sword Demon with a pained expression. I told you not to have too much contact with shady people. Don't joke around. Sword Demon said. Alright. Then let's do this for now. I'll ask around for this guy's location, and you guys go observe him in secret. Take a look at this guy's behavior and actions. Once we understand more, we can make further deductions. Luka said. Do you want to go together? Gu Fei asked. Me? I'll pass. I'm too conspicuous. Luka said. You can put on makeup. Didn't I say that before? I'd rather die than paint my face like that. Luka said. Women. Gu Fei sighed in his heart. When it was important, she was still obsessed with some things that didn't matter. Then hurry up and go. Find out where he is as soon as possible. Sword Demon said. Wait for my news. Luka nodded at Sword Demon. The two were about to go out when Sword Demon suddenly turned his head. Oh yeah, who are these rice soup and white sand people? Won't they be exposed? Don't worry. Although these two guys joined our guild, they haven't arrived at Forest Shade City yet. I've already told them not to rush over. Luka said. You've already sent people to other main cities? For what? To open a branch? Sword Demon asked. Why do you care so much? Gossip. Go do your thing. Daily quests, you want to do it for a week? Shame. Luka said. And this. Take it, I almost forgot. Seeing that the two were about to go out, Luka remembered something and handed something to each of them. The two took a look. Sure enough, it was the badge of the Deep Freeze Guild. The official badge issued by the system was made of unknown materials, but this pirated one was carved from wood and then colored. There were indeed crouching tigers and hidden dragons among the players. This was enough to pass off as the real thing. Take it. If anyone suspects it, take it out for them to see. Try not to wear it. If you encounter appraisal, you'll definitely be exposed. Luka warned. Is that so? Upon hearing that, both of them performed appraisal on the item. As expected, the item identified by the appraisal skill was a piece of wood. Let's go. The two left the small hut after putting on the fake badge. They covered their faces and walked toward the forest. On the way, Gu Fei suddenly made a new suggestion. I think we should let Gongzi come over. That guy is good at figuring out other people's intentions. That's true, but do you think he'll be willing to do it like this? Sword Demon gestured at Gu Fei's face. No, I mean after the two of us finish investigating the situation, we can let him analyze it. Gu Fei said. Then let's finish first. Okay, let's go. The two entered the forest, changed into camouflage, and walked toward the training area of the Deep Freeze Guild. Unexpectedly, as they gradually approached, Gu Fei suddenly felt the surrounding aura move. Just like the first time the two came, a few people suddenly stood out from the bushes behind the trees and aimed their arrows at the two. We're on the same side. Gu Fei waved in all directions. How could this be? Sword Demon sent a private message to Gu Fei. The so-called guilty conscience was the sword ghost's current state. At the slightest sign of trouble, he would immediately suspect that he had been exposed. He didn't have the talent to be a bad person. Badge. Quickly put on the badge. Gu Fei's heart moved. He felt that this should be the case. While sending a message to Sword Demon, he had already put on the badge. Rice soup, white sand new member. Gu Fei introduced himself and Sword Demon to the surrounding players. He lifted his camouflage and showed everyone the badge he had just hung on the chest of his mage robe. Sword Demon imitated him and did the same. The two lifted their clothes and spun around like male models on the runway. As for whether this fake badge would work or not, the two of them weren't sure. But thinking about it, Lu Ku put in a lot of effort to get it. She should understand their guild's habits. If it didn't work, she wouldn't have put in so much effort. Just as Gu Fei was thinking about this, the people in the circle had already put away their bows and arrows. They hid again as if nothing had happened. Only one person waved at the two of them, indicating that it was fine. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief and continued to walk forward through the security area. They're quite guarded, Gu Fei said. Are they afraid that strangers will come in and steal military secrets? What secrets can there be? The main thing is that they don't want people to sneak into their practice area and get in the way. Sword Demon had played with IE and the others for a long time. He knew that when they were practicing with traps and monsters, it was quite annoying if an unknown stranger stepped in. The coordinates of the water-breaking arrow that Lu Ku had asked for were quickly sent over. The two of them immediately headed in this direction. If we keep 10 meters away, will we be unable to hear what he says? Sword Demon still remembered Gu Fei saying to keep 10 meters away, enough to not be detected by the water-breaking arrow. That person's voice is quite strong. If it's quiet enough, 10 meters away, it's enough to hear very clearly, Gu Fei said. The two of them chatted as they walked. From time to time, they would see the figures of Extreme Freeze players dressed like them. But at this time they were already in the inner area. No one jumped up and pointed their bows at the two of them. Even if they met face to face, everyone just smiled casually and passed by. Look, it's over there. Sword Demon suddenly pointed with his hand. In the area in front of them, there were 10 or so players surrounding them. Water-breaking arrow was among them, holding something in his hand and gesturing to the people around him. Go this way. The two of them walked in a small circle. At the same time, they discovered that it was quite difficult to get within 10 meters of water-breaking arrow without anyone noticing. This was because this guy wasn't alone. There was a circle of people around him, and a circle of eyes were looking in all directions. The two of them, who had only been with these players for a day, didn't have the ability to hide in the bushes and move quietly like Ginkgo Tea or IE. In the end, Sword Demon entered stealth, and Gu Fei used teleportation to do a few space jumps. The two of them finally arrived behind a tree behind water-breaking arrow. What's he holding in his hand? Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. He hid behind the tree, and Sword Demon relied on stealth to stand outside and look in that direction. A piece of paper. Sword Demon replied. At the same time, water-breaking arrow's voice also clearly floated into the two's ears. You guys see this place. When you lure the enemy over, no matter which direction you come from, these 3 entrances are enough to take care of you. And after entering the 3 paths, the way you walk is completely the same. This way, you don't need to memorize too much, and the brothers who set the traps are easy to grasp. But when it comes to actual combat, we also need to fully deal with the enemy's numbers. If it's only 2 or 3 people, there's nothing to say. But we have 12 people. In fact, there's no need to lure the enemy into traps. We can just surround and suppress them. We really need to make full use of the traps when both sides have equal numbers, or even when the enemy is strong and we are weak. As long as we can lure the enemy into our traps, then we won't be fighting with 12 people. Every trap set on the ground is our partner. So Little Star, your role is very crucial. You are the guide of this entire battle. Every step you take is related to your teammate's next move. Everyone is following your guidance. You must be familiar with the position of every trap, the position of every teammate. Every step you take will have an impact on the battle situation. You must know in your heart what kind of impact it will have, because the turning point of victory and defeat is often at your step. Wow, this guy really knows how to talk. Gu Fei exclaimed. Yeah. Not only could the sword ghost talk, but he could also see. He clearly saw that the guide of the battle, that the water-breaking arrow focused on, was a rogue. Because of the painted face, Sword Demon couldn't see his current emotions, but he could imagine that this thief must be extremely proud. Chapter 511. From your dark psychological point of view, he seems to be showing off his knowledge, encouraging people, and inducing others to have a good impression of him. But normally, if I were to explain, it would probably be the same, Sword Demon said honestly. That's right, continue to observe, Gu Fei replied. The two quietly followed Water-Breaking Arrow. This guy had been going in circles in the forest, but it was a circle with a fixed route. Every place he passed by was a team's practice ground. Water-Breaking Arrow would observe their situation from the side and give some targeted advice. And his words and actions were just like what Sword Demon said. They were all very normal actions. Of course, from the perspective of Gu Fei's dark psychological point of view, he had ulterior motives. However, to prove this point, more convincing evidence was needed. Gu Fei and Sword Demon followed him to discover something, but in the end, what they heard and saw was nothing more. Can you see anything? Gu Fei and Sword Demon were a little tired from following him. After eavesdropping on Water-Breaking Arrow's conversation with the players, they didn't immediately chase after him. The two sat together under a tree and looked at the sky that couldn't be seen. Sword Demon's right hand was raised to his mouth again, his two fingers holding his dagger in a smoking posture. I can't see anything at all. Sword Demon sighed. We're not professionals in this kind of thing. Gu Fei had to admit that Sword Demon had online gaming talent, and he was a kung fu expert. Both of them were indeed outstanding in their own fields, but this kind of investigation and evidence collection was also a subject. The two of them didn't have much experience. Perhaps there was a professional who had already seen more suspicious points from Water-Breaking Arrow's words and actions. He was not like Gu Fei, who had a preconceived notion of gauging the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. What should we do? Sword Demon asked Gu Fei. He was the one who came up with the idea of following him, and now it seemed to be a failure. If he continues to go back and forth in this forest to guide everyone, I don't think we'll find anything, Gu Fei said. But maybe he'll go somewhere else? Who are you going to meet? There's no need for that. It's fine as long as there's news of the incident, Sword Demon said. How troublesome. Gu Fei sighed ruefully. Sending messages was something that players had no way of knowing. If they had any secrets, they could just say them here. Outsiders wouldn't have the slightest chance of knowing. Hey, are we still following him or not? He's going far away. The two of them were only taking a short break behind the tree. The breaking water arrow was still within their sights. To be honest, Gu Fei wasn't in a hurry. This guy is just a simple quest for you. He is indeed very helpful to Deepwater's guild, but your quest doesn't conflict with this help. Even if you kill him, this kind of help will still be provided. With your face covered, he won't know who you are, and it won't affect his relationship with Deepwater and the others. You don't need to feel any guilt for killing him. You're just completing your quest. I know, but I'm not concerned about the mission right now. If this guy has any ulterior motives towards Deepwater and Luca's guild, I must stop him, Sword Demon said. Then I suggest we go find Gongzi. I think he can provide the greatest help in the current situation, Gu Fei said. Okay. Sword Demon nodded. It's best if his lousy guild collapses. Why should I help him? The place to find Han family young master was, of course, a tavern in Shady Grove City. The entire Shady Grove City was like a village. The architectural style was very rural, and the tavern was no exception. The environment really felt many years behind the other main cities. Han family young master, who was drinking under such conditions, was obviously in a bad mood. After listening to Gu Fei and Sword Demon's words, he threw out such a sentence without thinking. Gu Fei still wanted to persuade him, but he heard Sword Demon on the side, as if he didn't hear Han family young master refusing to help, and continued to talk about the situation they observed. That water-breaking arrow, according to Qianli's judgment, has a trained combat physique. In addition, he seems to be really knowledgeable about jungle combat, and has a set of traps. There are a lot of people in Extreme Frost who admire him. What's so strange about that? It just so happens that his real strength is displayed in the game. Such a person is of course much stronger than ordinary players. Isn't there one next to you? Han family young master was, of course, talking about Gu Fei. With a body of kung fu, he was like a fish in water in the game's world of fighting and killing. That's true, but I understand your concern, said Han family young master. Using this kind of trick to defeat a guild, although it's disgusting, is indeed the most effective way. Sword Demon didn't speak. Gu Fei looked into his eyes and found that his gaze was very distant. It was obvious that he was thinking of something. And what Han family young master said just now seemed to be pointing at something. Did this include their past? What happened at that time? I know you still don't want to admit it. However, I still want to reiterate for the nth time that it was definitely a premeditated action, not what you call a quarrel between brothers, said Han family young master. What happened? What happened? Gu Fei quickly inquired. It was in the game before. Sword Demon only said this sentence and didn't continue. In fact, from the simple conversation between the two, Gu Fei had already guessed something. It was probably that Sword Demon's guild also had a very popular person like Broken Water Arrow, which caused the guild members to wholeheartedly support him. In the end, the guild must have disbanded or split up. Han family young master thought that it was premeditated to break up the guild, while Sword Demon thought that it was just an internal conflict between the two of them. There were naturally many details in this, but it was obvious that Sword Demon didn't want to mention it, so Gu Fei kept his mouth shut. Although he would occasionally say a few poisonous words, those were all harmless jokes. Gu Fei wouldn't intentionally do things that really hurt people's hearts. Do you think there's anything suspicious about this Broken Water Arrow? Gu Fei brought the topic back to the present. He doesn't need anything suspicious. In a guild, it's taboo to have a person who can steal the limelight from the guild leader, and is more popular than the guild leader. As the saying goes, a mountain can't have two tigers. If Deepwater doesn't understand this, his guild will either split up or disband. But with that guy's personality, he'll probably stupidly give up the position of guild leader to someone else and still think that he's noble and unquestionable integrity, said Han family young master. That's also good, it's not a big deal, right? The position of guild leader wasn't a big deal, so Gu Fei didn't care at all. The guild leader is the soul of a guild. The cultivation of a successful guild's temperament is almost all under the influence of the guild leader. Casually changing the guild leader means changing the entire guild style, principles, and aura. Only irresponsible people would casually hand over the position of guild leader to an inexplicable person. Although it's a game, this position isn't simple. Many brothers and friends are anxiously waiting for it. Just saying that so-and-so is more suitable to be the guild leader than me and you throw the position away. You think that you're cool and noble, but do you know how many people's hearts have turned cold? Said Han family young master. Wah. Gu Fei didn't know whether to sit or not at the table. In any case, he felt uncomfortable. Are you the one talking? Are you the one talking? Why are these words coming from the mouth of the most despicable person? Is there still justice in this world? Go back and tell Deepwater that if he's still clear-headed, he should kick this kind of person out of the guild as soon as possible. Even if he doesn't have such thoughts, sometimes things don't go according to his wishes. Continued Han family young master. Not according to my wishes, but will it follow your wishes? Suddenly, a voice came from the other side. The three looked towards the direction of the voice and were immediately stunned. Gu Fei and Sword Demon looked at each other. They didn't think that there would be such a coincidence. Deepwater actually appeared here at this time, and seemed to have listened to everything. Oh, it's you? You came at the right time. The two of us here have really worried their hearts out for you. Han family young master's face never showed embarrassment or embarrassment. At any time, he could look down on everything with disdain. Sometimes it was really admirable. Deepwater didn't say a word. He silently walked to the table of the three and looked at Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Suddenly, his hand quickly stretched out. Even Gu Fei didn't have time to react. The mask on Sword Demon's face was already pulled off by Deepwater. Fuck! The one who shouted was Han family young master. Sword Demon's face, with such makeup, was really a bit surreal. What do you mean? Deepwater held the mask on Sword Demon's face in his hand. Breaking Water Arrow is my quest target. I want to see what kind of person he is, replied Sword Demon. Quest target? I think I heard that you guys are suspicious of something? Deepwater's tone was very calm, but Sword Demon knew that they would never talk so calmly. Everyone laughed and scolded each other. They would always be very excited. That's right. I suspect that he snuck into your guild with ulterior motives. Sword Demon dared to do things. He would never be afraid to admit it. Really? What intentions? Asked Deepwater. I don't have any evidence. It's just a suspicion, said Sword Demon. Really? That's why you made these things? Deepwater shook off Sword Demon's mask. Sword Demon was silent. We're old friends, Deepwater said. If you really have any suspicions, you can tell me directly. Just because it's just a suspicion, I don't want to affect your relationship. So, I want to see clearly in the dark. Sword Demon's words were very sincere. His expression was also very sincere. Unfortunately, it was covered by the makeup. So I really should thank you, said Deepwater. Sword Demon continued to be silent. Old Broken, Deepwater suddenly shouted. Gu Fei and Sword Ghost were both shocked. Then they saw the door of the tavern being pushed open. Broken Arrow had already calmly walked to the table in a few steps, looking down from above. My friends have some misunderstanding towards you. Come and explain it to them, said Deepwater. There's nothing to explain. Time will prove everything. Breaking Water Arrow said indifferently. Well said. Deepwater heavily patted Breaking Water Arrow's shoulder. Time will reveal a person's heart. Time will indeed prove everything. Deepwater angrily threw Sword Demon's mask on the table and turned to leave. Chapter 512. Enjoy your meal. Water Breaking Arrow raised his hand and made a please gesture before leaving the tavern along with Water Depth. Wow. Look at this guy, he's so cunning. Gu Fei felt that the atmosphere was heavy and awkward and needed some adjustment. Actually, Water Breaking Arrow was the same as Gu Fei and Sword Demon. They both had their faces covered. Han Family Young Master didn't say a word as he quietly looked at Sword Demon. Sword Demon slowly picked up the mask that Water Depth dropped on the table and carefully folded it neatly before putting it back into his pocket. He stood up and took a deep breath. I'm going to wash my face. After saying this to Gu Fei and Han Family Young Master, Sword Demon left alone, going for wool and coming home shorn. Han Family Young Master returned to his normal self and said to Gu Fei in a mocking tone, Bastard, I underestimated him. Gu Fei nodded. If Water Depth's appearance here could be considered a coincidence, then Water Breaking Arrow appearing at the same time was very abnormal. In the forest, it was originally the two of them following Water Breaking Arrow, but then they gave up halfway and went to the tavern to find Han Family Young Master. Just as they arrived, Water Depth and Water Breaking Arrow arrived behind them and heard their conversation. No matter how you looked at it, this coincidence was man-made. This guy noticed that we were following him a long time ago, but he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything until he saw that we were doing something else. He immediately called Water Depth over and caught us. Gu Fei asserted. Obviously. Han Family Young Master said. He didn't need to say anything. Water Depth listened and saw for himself. There's nothing more convincing than this. But Sword Demon was clearly doing this for his own good. How could he not understand this? Gu Fei said. Of course he understood, but he couldn't stand Sword Demon's suspicion towards Water Breaking Arrow, because he already saw Water Breaking Arrow as his brother. Han Family Young Master said. Do you think it's that easy to recognize a brother? Gu Fei expressed his disagreement. That's right. This is the biggest shortcoming of this idiot. He always trusts others easily. Han Family Young Master said. Childish, very childish. Gu Fei commented with an air of seniority. After he finished, he stood up and said, I'm going to look for the Water Breaking Arrow. I don't care about anything else, just kill it first. It's useless. The Han Family Young Master shook his head. Violence won't solve this problem. Cutting off the Water Breaking Arrow will only worsen the relationship between Water Depth and Sword Demon. I know, I'm just saying. Gu Fei said. So what can we do? Actually, we don't have to do anything at all. Han Family Young Master said. Oh, Wait until water-breaking arrow turns his guild upside down. That idiot will naturally know how stupid he is, Han family's young master said as he drank his wine. Yes. Gu Fei nodded. That's rare. I actually agree with your plan this time. Unfortunately, there's someone who doesn't know how to do it, Han family young master said. Sword demon? Gu Fei realized. Han family young master nodded. Gu Fei was silent. Actually, both of them are idiots. Han family young master shook his head. Then what do you think Sword Demon will do now? Gu Fei asked. He's probably going to find Ke first. Don't tell me that Ke didn't participate in this at all, Han family young master said. Will it affect the relationship between Lu Ku and Water Depth? Gu Fei said. Now do you know how serious the problem is? Water Depth only trusts water-breaking arrow and doesn't trust anyone else. Gu Fei was shocked. Didn't I say it before? This isn't a problem of trust. It's just that he hates people who are suspicious of his friends. Everyone has something they can't tolerate. You've stepped on Water Depth's weakness, Han family young master said. Now that you mention it, I feel that water-breaking arrow has completely considered Water Depth's personality. If he's just a friend he's known for a few days, how could he have such a deep understanding of Water Depth? That guy came prepared. He had already investigated everything that Water Depth could do, Gu Fei said. That's right. That's why with Water Depth's trusting personality, he's basically his nemesis. He'll be completely eaten by him. In the end, he'll obediently give up his position and think that it's a good thing, Han family young master said. Yeah, then water-breaking arrow will be in control. Whether it's disbanding the guild or kicking people out, he'll do whatever suits his interests. Considering that many people are used to pushing their responsibilities away, no matter how much they supported water-breaking arrow before, they'll naturally blame Water Depth for giving the position to water-breaking arrow. After all, he gave up his position and trusted him the most. Gu Fei continued to imagine. Everyone is pointing their fingers at him, Han family young master summarized. He can kill anyone, Gu Fei added. Doesn't it feel good? Han family young master asked. Too good. But if it's water-breaking arrow who ends up like this, then it'll be even better. Is there any way? Gu Fei asked. Messing with people should be Han family young master's forte. Not at the moment, Han family young master replied. Gu Fei was very depressed. In fact, he thought of chasing water-breaking arrow like a shadow and killing him until he didn't have the strength to carry out his plan. However, as Han family young master said, although it might stop water-breaking arrow, it would greatly worsen the relationship between Water Depth and Sword Demon. If Water Depth only hated Gu Fei, then Gu Fei wasn't afraid. The key was that he would bring Sword Demon along. Gu Fei couldn't do such an irresponsible thing. So troublesome. I'll go take a look. Gu Fei sighed and got up. Sitting in the tavern obviously wasn't a good idea. No matter how troublesome it was, life had to go on. Of course, the game had to go on. Under a big tree on the edge of Shady City, the sword ghost stood quietly under the tree. The grease on his face had been washed away, and the camouflage clothes and badges he had worn had been neatly packed away. Not long after, Lu Ke hurried out of the woods. You said he already knows? Not in the mood to greet him, Lu Ke went straight to the point. Sword Demon nodded and didn't speak. Lu Ke was also silent. No one would be more familiar with Water Depth than she was. She could fully predict how Water Depth would react after knowing this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to do it in private. They could have called Water Depth to suspect the new water-breaking arrow. So troublesome. Lu Ke finally spoke. Playing a stupid game has a lot of trouble. How did he find out? Maybe it's water-breaking arrow. Maybe he found out that we've been following him, so he called Water Depth to follow us. Sword Demon wasn't stupid. He also had some inferences about what Gu Fei and Han family young master noticed, but he wouldn't think from the most vicious angle. His inference even left room for water-breaking arrow to explain. I think it's also this guy's doing, Lu Ke said. But the problem is that Water Depth doesn't believe it, Sword Demon said. Of course he doesn't believe it. Even if there's evidence in front of him, He might not believe it. You should be very clear because you're the same as him. Sometimes I really don't understand. What's the point of deceiving yourself and refusing to believe it? Luca said. You don't understand, so you're not the same kind of person as us. Sword Demon said. I don't have time to play deep with you. It's so annoying. What do we do now? Luca said. I'll tell you first. He'll probably guess that you're also involved. Sword Demon said. Of course. Look at your clothes and your makeup. Hey, how did you wash away the makeup I worked so hard on? Luca said halfway, and actually noticed this kind of thing. It's useless, so of course I washed it. What a waste of time and energy. What about the 2 badges? Don't throw them away. They were made with a lot of money. Luca said. Here. Sword Demon gave the badges and camouflage clothes to Luca. Throw the clothes away. I'm annoyed when I see them. There's nothing to do. Why are you doing jungle warfare? Luca waved her hand. Did Water Depth find you? Sword Demon asked. I don't know. Luca said. Why are you still angry at this time? Hurry up and think of a way to solve it. Sword Demon said. Who's angry? I really don't know. You just sent me a message saying that Water Depth knows, and I immediately blocked him. I don't want to see him before this matter is solved. It's annoying. Luca said. But how do we solve it? Sword Demon looked at the sky. Let the guild be destroyed by water-breaking arrow. Let him learn a lesson. Luca clenched her teeth. That's not right. Sword Demon said seriously. The guild belongs to every brother in the guild. It shouldn't be a sacrifice. No matter what, we can't use the guild as a bet. What else can we do? Luca spread her hands. Sword Demon was silent for a long time. Finally he made up his mind. Let's get rid of water-breaking arrow. What? Luca jumped in fright. She knew very well what this meant. With the current situation, this was the same as breaking ties with Water Depth and becoming enemies with their entire guild. It's just that, we don't know how many times this water-breaking arrow will be killed before he gives up. If he really does fight to the end with Water Depth's personality, he will definitely keep fighting for him. If he doesn't disappear even if he's only level 10, he will still be a hidden danger. Sword Demon said. I'm asking you. Are you serious? Luca looked at Sword Demon. I'm very serious. Sword Demon looked back. Do you know what this means? Luca said. I know. Sword Demon's expression flashed with a trace of pain. This of course meant that he and Water Depth would never be friends again. Luca continued to look at him. After a long silence, she turned her head to the side. I know that once you've decided on something, no one can change it. So you make your own decisions. I've already made up my mind. But do you think this is an effective method? Sword Demon said. You're asking me? Luca asked back. Answer me honestly. Okay, I'll answer you honestly. This method is effective. Luca said. Once a war breaks out because of this, and water-breaking arrow is killed multiple times, then he will become a pitiful person sheltered by the guild. He will lose the yearning of others. Some people will even get tired of him because of repeated battles for him. Not to mention, in online games, levels always speak. If the gap is too big, people will just habitually ignore you. At this time, what bargaining chip does water-breaking arrow have to win the hearts of the guild? Chapter 5:13. Your analysis is correct. After listening to Luca's words, Sword Demon nodded. But you should know that I don't want you to do this at all, Luca said. I know, so just think of it as me going to complete my daily quest. Sword Demon finished speaking and turned to look into the depths of the woods. He was ready to step in, but he suddenly stopped. By the way, there's no need to tell my brothers about this anymore. I refuse. After saying this, Luca turned around and left with the sword ghost. Gufei walked on the muddy streets of Shady City. This main city was surrounded by greenery, with a kind of secluded tranquility, and the air was extremely fresh, relaxing. It was such a good place, but he encountered such an annoying thing. What was more annoying was that this matter was mainly related to Sword Demon. If it was only Gu Fei's own trouble, he could deal with it freely. It was because it was someone else's that he was so anxious and felt powerless. Sir, newly released equipment, do you want one? Suddenly, someone said in Gu Fei's ear, making Gu Fei suddenly come back to his senses. Someone was actually close to him, but he didn't notice it at all. He was really distracted. But this flower girl peddling method was unprecedented. Gu Fei turned his head and saw a familiar face. How come it's you? Gu Fei said. I wanted to ask you the same thing. Standing next to Gu Fei was Shi Xiaotian. What are you doing here? Gu Fei said while looking around to see if there were any victims within a few hundred meters who were coming to kill him. It's rare for me to go on a long trip, and now I don't have to act as a group. Of course, I have to stay in each main city, Shi Xiaotian said. A scourge like you, no main city will welcome you, Gu Fei said. That's not necessarily true. I also often contribute to the prosperity of the market economy in the game. On the other hand, when you went out this time, there were huge changes in the level rankings. It seems like a lot of the people who dropped levels were related to you, right? Shi Xiaotian said. I have a clear conscience, Gu Fei said. Me too. Shi Xiaotian smiled. Gu Fei was speechless. As a swindler, she did not feel that her actions were shameful. Of course, she could also say that she had a clear conscience. This was a fallacious logic, but there was no way to refute it. Gu Fei had the urge to beat her up. Speaking of which, your emotions are very obvious. It's very dangerous. It will give people like us an opportunity to take advantage of you, Shi Xiaotian suddenly said. The grease on Gu Fei's face had also been wiped clean after leaving the tavern. Since it was no longer necessary, no one wanted to smear their face like that. Is that so? You don't have to worry about it. Gu Fei replied indifferently, and was about to walk away when he heard someone shouting from the other end. It was getting closer and closer. Wow. That's too much. Now that it's so troublesome, you brats still have the mood to pick up girls here. Lu Ku walked out of a narrow alley and pointed directly at Gu Fei as she ran over. Where's Sword Demon? Isn't he with you? Gu Fei looked around and didn't see Sword Demon nearby. I was just about to talk to you guys. Sword Demon is preparing to kill Water-Breaking Arrow, Lu Ku said. That's good. Where is he? I'll go help. Gu Fei immediately became spirited. Good my ass. Think about the consequences of this. Lu Ku scolded. Gu Fei frowned. He and the Han family young master had already analyzed the consequences of killing Water-Breaking Arrow, but Sword Demon himself decided to do it. Does this mean that he would rather sacrifice his friendship to help Water Depth protect his guild? This guy. Gu Fei didn't know what to say. This guy, should he be moved or should he say that he's stupid? We have to think of a way that satisfies both sides. Lu Ku looked at Gu Fei. You're saying, a way that allows Sword Demon not to sacrifice himself, and also prevents Water-Breaking Arrow's scheme from succeeding? Gu Fei said. N. Lu Ku's eyes were filled with anticipation. I'm not Ishio. Gu Fei's reply. Hey, why are you still joking? What time is this? Lu Ku was annoyed by Gu Fei's disapproving attitude. If you don't do anything, your guild may be destroyed by Water-Breaking Arrow, but Water Depth will understand Sword Demon's friendship with him. If you chase Water-Breaking Arrow, you can stop him from destroying your guild, but you will completely lose Water Depth as a friend. This is a choice. Sword Demon has already made his choice, and I know that when he made his choice, he didn't hesitate at all. He won't regret it, and he knows what the ending he wants the most is. Maybe following his wishes is the best. Gu Fei said. What are you talking about? He was forced to make this choice. Do you think he's willing to do this? Lu Ku shouted. Girl, you have to know that because there is no way to satisfy both sides, he can only choose. If there was, we wouldn't be standing here stupidly, right? Gu Fei said. There will always be a way. Lu Ku said. Reality is sometimes cruel. Gu Fei said helplessly. Excuse me. Shi Xiaotian, who was listening on the side, finally couldn't help but say. Your topic seems to be very deep. Do you mind telling me what it is? Maybe I can help. Who are you? Lu Ku asked. A liar. Gu Fei replied. Lu Ku was surprised, but Shi Xiaotian didn't care and even said with a proud tone. And a professional. Hey, Gu Fei snorted. A liar is shameful enough, but what's even more shameful is this guy's proud attitude. It's really unbearable. I say, Shi Xiaotian pointed at Gu Fei and said to Lu Ku. Even he is helpless. It's obvious that you've encountered a problem that can't be solved with violence. Maybe you need some knowledge and brains in other areas. You really have a way? Lu Ku asked. Don't try anything when you're in a hurry, Gu Fei said. The two women glared at him together with a strong murderous aura. It's like this. Lu Ku briefly described the matter to Shi Xiaotian. Too unprincipled. Gu Fei muttered. So that's how it is. Shi Xiaotian nodded. It's obvious that the other party has completely grasped that idiot president's character. So they created such a targeted conspiracy. He took advantage of your eagerness to win the battle for the main city, and provided you with very valuable abilities to win favor and expectations. Then he entered the guild and upgraded this favor and expectations to trust, obedience, and worship. When the time is right, he will replace that idiot president's position in one fell swoop. Originally, this kind of plan would take a long time to implement, but everything develops very quickly in the game, and people's abilities are very intuitive. I think a month's time is enough. Your analysis is very accurate, Lu Ku said. Of course. Show off your abilities and win the trust of others. Gu Fei reminded him from the side. No one paid attention, so Lu Ku added. Also, that idiot president you're talking about is my husband. Really? Your husband can build the largest guild in Forest Shade City. It's really amazing, Shi Xiaotian said. Wow, you can't be serious, right? Gu Fei was surprised. Idiot became great in an instant. Wasn't this too obvious? But there's one thing. You said this kind of plan would take a month? Lu Ku said. Shi Xiaotian nodded. This is already considering the game environment. It's very fast. But if the battle for the main city starts within a month, and he hasn't had time to destroy our guild, wouldn't he be busy for nothing? Lu Ku said. You're wrong. What he wants to do is not to destroy, but to replace. He won't even reveal his true intentions before the battle for the main city starts. He will borrow your guild's manpower, material resources, and financial resources to win the battle for the main city. Think about it. Who will be the biggest contributor to the victory of the battle for the main city? Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei and Lu Ku couldn't help but look at each other. You have trust, popularity, and contributions. If you want to be the guild leader, when the conditions are right, success will follow. After that, I'm afraid the matter of using this to control the main city to seek benefits has nothing to do with you, Shi Xiaotian said. Indeed, this is the perfect plan, Lu Ku said. Shi Xiaotian shrugged and continued. Also, you said you were discovered by him when you were following us? The one who discovered you might not be him, but his accomplices. Accomplices? Lu Ku was surprised. This kind of plan, especially in the relatively simple environment of entering a guild in the game, he shouldn't come in alone to stir things up. He will mix with a group of people, and many times these people will spread some words to promote his position. If he is very cautious, it's not impossible to borrow a few pairs of eyes to pay attention to the movements around him, Shi Xiaotian said. This surprised Gu Fei. When following them, water-breaking arrow passed through Extreme Cold's practice area. There were people everywhere. It was impossible to avoid everyone's eyes. Therefore, the two could only try to avoid being discovered by water-breaking arrow. As for the gazes of others, they could only pretend that they were calmly passing by or practicing. If water-breaking arrow's eyes were hidden among these people, it wouldn't be strange for them to discover the two of them. Speaking of which, the two were very cautious and maintained a distance of 10 meters. Gu Fei couldn't understand how water-breaking arrow discovered the two of them. This explanation was reasonable. There doesn't seem to be anyone who joined the guild with water-breaking arrow, Lu Ku said. Joining at the same time is too conspicuous. They shouldn't do this. But those who joined around the time he joined are very suspicious, Shi Xiaotian said. Hey, Gu Fei suddenly thought of something. It can't be soup and white sand, right? These two were new. If they were water-breaking arrows accomplices, then was there a need to say anything? The first time Luku introduced them to water-breaking arrow, they must have already been exposed. No, these two can't be them. Luka flatly denied. In fact, they might not be new to the guild. Maybe the other party has been planting people in your guild, or bribing people. Shi Xiaotian said. Bribing people? Gu Fei felt that this matter was getting more and more complicated and exaggerated. Yes, if the manipulator behind the scenes is a studio or some interest group, bribing is not impossible. Shi Xiaotian said. Butterfly not. Maybe there are people who don't like Miss Shi's appearance, but we need more knowledge and brains. I stole the words. Chapter 514. If it's a studio, they can offer benefits that normal guilds can't. Shi Xiaotian said. I understand. Luka nodded. Studios and guilds were two completely different groups. To put it bluntly, guilds were nothing more than an entertainment group for players to gather together. It was a fellowship. Even at the top level of extreme frost, it could only give players a sense of spiritual satisfaction. Apart from that, the benefits of game resources were only limited to within the game. Studios were different. This was a benefit group with a clear organization and division of labor. The members received a real salary. In this way, it was easy to recruit a few temporary employees from the guild with the more tangible benefits of cash. In the face of undisguised benefits, there weren't many people who could maintain their integrity. Hey, you've analyzed so much. Do you have any ideas? Gu Fei said. We have to have the best of both worlds. You heard what I meant by the best of both worlds, right? Luka said. Shi Xiaotian smiled. Wait. Wait for what? The two didn't understand. Since you said that this person has some real ability, then why not make full use of his ability? After winning the battle for the main city with his help, then find someone to disguise as a revenant from another guild, and launch a sneak attack on the core members of the guild. Of course, you can pretend to miss your husband, but for water-breaking arrow, you must ruthlessly kill him and quickly drop his level in a short period of time. At this time, no matter how outstanding his ability is, without the support of a level, he won't be able to convince people in the game. I believe that there wouldn't be any idiots who would support a level 35 person to be the guild leader. As long as the person you find doesn't give the game away, I believe that your husband won't suspect you. How about it? Shi Xiaotian said as he looked at the two. Oh. Gu Fei and Luku were both speechless. All they had been thinking about was how to stop the water-breaking arrow from carrying out his conspiracy. They had never thought of taking advantage of the water-breaking arrow, and then ruthlessly abandoning him like a wild dog. This idea is very satisfying. Luka nodded first. However, it seems that you still haven't been able to see through the danger of the water-breaking arrow. This doesn't seem to be of any help in mending your relationship. Gu Fei more or less felt that Shi Xiaotian was not happy with his suggestions, so he had to find some flaws. When you were talking about having the best of both worlds, you didn't mention anything about mending the relationship, did you? Shi Xiaotian said. No, but if you can do that, it would be perfect. After nitpicking, Gu Fei purposely created another problem. If he wanted to repair the cracks that had already appeared, he would have to show depth enough evidence to prove that there was a problem with the water-breaking arrow. However, in the game where it was impossible to track the water-breaking arrow, and investigating and collecting evidence was very difficult. Doing this would be much more difficult than breaking the water-breaking arrow's levels. Ah, yes, young lady, do you have a solution? Winning the main city battle isn't important at all. There's no need to pay attention to it. Luka said. I see. Then to what extent will your husband believe the water-breaking arrow's plot? Shi Xiaotian asked. That guy is sometimes very smart, but sometimes he's very stubborn. To be honest, no matter how much evidence there is, if he doesn't believe it, then there's nothing anyone can do. Luka said. Don't tell me that when the truth comes out, he'll be like this. Shi Xiaotian said as he grabbed Gu Fei's collar and yelled. Brother, tell me this isn't true. You must have some difficulties, right? Will it be like this? Hey. Gu Fei slapped her hand away. Lu Ku, whose face had been tense all this time, let out a rare pu laugh. She shook her head and said, I don't know about this, but it shouldn't be this old-fashioned. But to do this it's very difficult, and the risk is very high. Shi Xiaotian said. So you've got an idea? Lu Ku was overjoyed. This water-breaking arrow should have a studio background. Then we'll pretend to be someone from another studio to poach him. In the process, we'll test his intentions. Who knows, we might be able to find out something. Shi Xiaotian said. Then arrange for water depth to coincidentally hear your conversation? Lu Ku asked. She was confident that she could make water depth come up with such a coincidence. I'm just afraid that this guy will be too cautious. When the time comes, he won't give anyone the opportunity to listen in. Shi Xiaotian said. Then what should we do? If we don't let water depth see, then wouldn't everything be in vain? Gu Fei said. Have you heard of a spell called Black Memory Box? Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei, this game illiterate, of course shook his head blankly. Lu Ku's eyes lit up. I know. When this spell is cast, it can record the surrounding scene and sound, then seal it in a magic scroll. When the scroll is used again, it can replay the scene and sound. You want to use this spell to record the scene of your conversation with water-breaking arrow. There's such a thing? How come I've never heard of it? Gu Fei was flabbergasted. You men only know how to fight and kill. This kind of skill that has nothing to do with fighting. Would you care about it? Lu Ku looked at him with disdain. This can only be a backup plan. If you can let your husband see the scene, then that would be the best. But if there's no such opportunity, then this is the only way, Shi Xiaotian said. The problem is that I've never heard of anyone who knows this spell, Lu Ku said. Even if someone knows it, it won't work. When the time comes, there'll only be me and water-breaking arrow. If I'm the one to release it, then it must be a skill scroll, Shi Xiaotian said. Let me ask around, Gu Fei said. The two girls looked at Gu Fei in astonishment. Hearing his confident tone, could it be that this guy had some great connections? In the end, after only 20 seconds, they heard Gu Fei say, No, that's too fast. The two girls were flabbergasted. I just asked about the skinny waist dance. Even she doesn't have it, Gu Fei said. There's no demand for this kind of thing. Even if someone had it, they'd probably just use it for their own entertainment. There's no need for it to circulate in the market, Shi Xiaotian analyzed. Then where would a monster drop this kind of thing? Lu Ku asked. Let me ask around. Gu Fei came again. Who are you asking? The two girls had already grasped Gu Fei's train of thought. Brother Yu, Gu Fei calmly replied. If he didn't ask Brother Yu, then who else could he ask? As expected, when the two girls heard this name, they became quiet. Brother Yu, who could gather information and fill in the blanks, could sometimes control the situation. Black Memory Box? What do you want this skill for? Brother Yu wanted to know everything. It's very useful. Just tell me where it drops, Gu Fei said. I've never really cared about this thing. I'll go ask around, Brother Yu said. Hurry up, Gu Fei urged. Okay. Brother Yu didn't feel annoyed by this kind of request. It was important to know that this was the joy of his game. He liked to gather information, and he enjoyed giving this information back to players who needed it. With a player like Gu Fei asking questions, it gave Brother Yu a great sense of satisfaction. You sit here first. I'll go offline and help Qianli ask around. After sending the message to Gu Fei, Brother Yu said to his deskmate, the Han family young master. That guy? What does he want to know? Han family young master creased his eyebrows. Black Memory Box. He's probably busy with the thing you're talking about, right? Brother Yu said. Black Memory Box? Han family young master had obviously heard of this thing. This guy wants to lure the snake out of its hole. I'll go first. Brother Yu waved his hand at Han family young master. Go. Han family young master shook the wine glass in his hand, saying goodbye. Brother Yu has already gone to ask around. I believe we'll have an answer soon, Gu Fei announced to the two girls. If brother you hadn't heard of this thing, then it would be a bit difficult. But since Lu Ke knew about it, brother you had obviously heard of it. It seemed like it wasn't a mysterious thing, and the difficulty of obtaining it wouldn't be too high. And while we're waiting for the news, you guys tell me the water-breaking arrow in detail, Shi Xiaotian said. Before that, isn't there something more important? Gu Fei said. And the two girls looked at him. Has Sword Demon already made his move? Gu Fei asked Lu Ke. Aya. Lu Ke repeatedly hit her head. Sword Demon had indeed entered the forest. She hurriedly sent a message to Sword Demon. After 2 or 3 back and forth, Lu Ke was so angry that she stomped her feet. This stupid brain, I'm lying to him. If I didn't have an idea, I wouldn't care about his life or death. Where is he? Gu Fei asked. He went to the forest, but no one told him the water-breaking arrow's location. He shouldn't be able to find it so easily, right? Lu Ke said. You guys only circled such a large area, so it's hard to say. Forget it, I'll go find him. You two continue. Gu Fei turned around and ran. I'll help you find the water-breaking arrow's location, Lu Ke shouted. Okay. Gu Fei responded and went further and further away. Aya. Lu Ke suddenly hit her head again. I don't have him as a friend. At him, Shi Xiaotian said. He wouldn't have it open right, Lu Ke said. I'll inform him. Shi Xiaotian sent a message to Gu Fei. Lu Ke's friend list was indeed full, but at this time she couldn't care about it. She deleted one and added Gu Fei. After she finished, she let out a sigh of relief. Seeing Shi Xiaotian beside her, she was startled and thought of something. She hurriedly said, Miss, what's your name? Shi Xiaotian. I really have to thank you. Lu Ke was very grateful. You're wrong. I'm not helping others. I just think this is very interesting. I'm looking forward to deceiving that water-breaking arrow guy. This is my hobby, that's all, Shi Xiaotian said. Your hobby is really unique, huh? No one would like a swindler, but it was hard for Lu Ke to hate this girl who claimed to be a swindler, especially when the other party really helped her. However, to actually treat crime as a hobby, was she sick? Lu Ke thought like this in her heart, but she asked, What do you want to know about the water-breaking arrow? Chapter 5:15. In Shady Forest City, Gu Fei hurried along while trying to send a message to Sword Demon. Hey, don't do it yet. I really have an idea, Gu Fei said. System notification. The user you sent the message to has not turned on message receiving. Gu Fei was helpless. He originally thought that with his usual temperament, maybe Sword Demon would believe him. But now Sword Demon had turned off the message switch. He had really made up his mind. This guy. Gu Fei sighed as he stepped into the forest. Dark, hazy, no one could be seen anywhere. But Gu Fei knew that not being able to see didn't mean that there was no one. This place was close to the extreme cold training ground. Maybe there were people crawling in the grass somewhere. And who knew when they would suddenly jump out and scare him? Just as Gu Fei was thinking about this, he heard the rustling sound of branches and leaves rubbing against each other. Have they appeared? Gu Fei looked around expressionlessly. Sure enough, he saw the soldiers in camouflage. They were all staring at Gu Fei and asking, What are you doing? Looking for someone, Gu Fei replied. He didn't stop and continued into the forest. The group of people had never seen such an ignorant person. They immediately drew their bows and roared. Stop, who allowed you to go in? Gu Fei didn't even turn his head. At this time he wasn't in the mood to waste time here. He continued to move quickly into the depths of the forest. Extreme Cold's team was stunned. They didn't expect this kind of situation to happen. According to normal logic, when they asked this question, the other party should have stopped, and then everyone should have a face-to-face negotiation, right? Just like this person. He treated them as if they didn't exist. The team entered a temporary mental block and didn't know what to do. Quick! Stop him! Finally, someone reacted first. Their group was at the outermost edge of Extreme Cold's reserved area. They were leveling up and practicing traps, and they were also responsible for stopping strangers who didn't belong to their guild from getting in the way. Most players came here to level up. As soon as they heard that a guild had claimed the space, they turned around and left. Who would be stupid enough to steal kills from a guild? However, the person before him was behaving abnormally. There was an 80% chance that he was here to cause trouble. The group of players roared and chased after him. The players who had lived in this forest for several months were very used to walking and running in the forest. Gu Fei's speed was greatly reduced in such an environment, and he was obviously no match for these guys if he competed directly. However, the biggest advantage of the forest was that it was easy to hide in. Gu Fei used teleportation and suddenly floated behind a tree. A group of people stopped and rubbed their eyes frantically. What they saw was that the guy suddenly disappeared into thin air as he ran. Everyone wondered if there was something wrong with their eyes, but they soon got the answer from the expressions of the others. What's going on? Everyone was asking. Disconnected, someone guessed. For a moment, this seemed to be the most reasonable answer. A group of people rushed to the spot where Gu Fei had disappeared and surrounded him. When he comes up, kill him immediately, the team leader ordered. Understood. Everyone copied their weapons. By this time, Gu Fei had already changed his direction and swaggered off. At this time, he had already obtained the coordinates of the breaking water arrow. Although the sword demon didn't have this information, this was his goal. No matter what method he used, he would eventually find this place. Gu Fei hoped that he could have a chance encounter with the sword demon like this. However, the previous scene made Gu Fei feel that this was a bit too rash. It seemed that disguising was still very necessary. Thinking about it, Gu Fei put on the camouflage mage robe again. Although the oil on his face had been wiped off, putting on a hat and covering his face with a cloth was also common attire. He believed that no one would make a fuss. More importantly, the fake badge was worn by Gu Fei in a conspicuous place on his chest. This way the effect was obvious. Gu Fei tried to swagger past a team of people, but the other party didn't have any strange feelings towards Gu Fei at all. Getting rid of these harassment, Gu Fei had no other scruples. He quickly ran to the location of the breaking water arrow that Lu Ke had pointed out. Sure enough, that guy was there teaching a team of people, and water depth was also at the side. If the breaking water arrow was as disgusting as garbage, then seeing water depth made Gu Fei angry like seeing a disobedient child. The urge to beat him up was quite urgent. However, this matter could be temporarily postponed. First, he would follow the breaking water arrow and meet the sword demon. Woods, it was the woods again. Recently, he frequently went in and out of the woods, each time with a different mood, but none was more complicated than now. After simply replying to a few messages sent by Lu Ke, the sword demon closed the message reception. Since things had come to this, he didn't want to waver in his determination. Looking at the dagger in his hand, the sword demon took a deep breath. It would be nice to have a cigarette at this time. After approaching the extremely cold training area, the sword demon entered stealth mode and walked quietly in the woods. While paying attention to his feet, he also paid attention to the movements around him. Every area here could be a training ground for a team, and at this time, the sword demon wanted to find such an area. A team of people, or a place with traps, were all representative of such an area. The sword demon knew that the breaking water arrow's activity habit was to rotate between each team and give guidance. So, as long as he stared at a team and waited patiently, there would always be a time when he would encounter the breaking water arrow. This method seemed a bit rigid, but it would definitely be effective. This was the style of the sword demon. Do what you're sure of, say what you're sure of. Soon, the sword ghost came across a small team that was busy. What they were busy with was exactly the same as what he did with Ai and the others yesterday. This place is fine, the sword demon said in his heart, and began to carefully observe the terrain of this place. He believed in Gu Fei's judgment that the breaking water arrow must be a very difficult opponent. To deal with such an opponent, the cross-level skill Fog Ambush was the trump card in the sword demon's mind. Coupled with the attack power of the long and short size after mastering both hands, the sword demon believed that as long as he hit the opponent, it would be enough to complete an instant kill. He had the ability to instantly kill, but he had to make sure that he hit. If he missed, and the breaking water arrow had the skill of Gu Fei, the sword demon knew what would happen to him. He must first sort out the surrounding environment. While observing, the sword demon even personally walked forward to try it out. There were advantages and disadvantages to using fog ambush in the woods. The advantage was that the shade of the trees in the woods was very similar to the pervasive fog. They both rejected the sunlight. In this way, the flaw that the shadow of the fog ambush, detected by Guxian, would not disappear during the disappearing stage could be ignored. The disadvantage was that there were too many obstacles on the ground in the woods, which would definitely affect the speed of the fog ambush. Only by observing the terrain clearly could he try to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. In addition, the sword demon also had to consider how to escape unscathed after being hit by the breaking water arrow. When the breaking water arrow arrived, a group of people here would come out to greet him. The sword demon's opponent was actually not just one person. How to escape under the eyes of so many people was also a problem. He was not afraid of death, but only by keeping his level could he retain his strength, and then he could kill the breaking water arrow a second time, a third time, or when the breaking water arrow left, he would quietly follow and find a chance to attack. The sword demon had such an idea. Although he could avoid being besieged in this way, he might lose the advantage of occupying the terrain. The sword demon looked at the terrain he had just studied and calculated. In the end, he still decided to attack here. At least this way, he had a higher chance of successfully killing. As for how to safely evacuate, it still depended on the reaction of others. Maybe if he attacked fast enough, they wouldn't be able to react at all. After everything was settled, the sword demon chose a position and quietly began to wait. After an unknown amount of time, he only saw the small team of players in front of him lead the monsters into the trap formation and kill wave after wave, but the breaking water arrow still did not appear. The sword demon did not have the slightest impatience. He was sure that as long as the breaking water arrow was online, it would always turn to this place. But what if he went offline? Suddenly thinking of this possibility, the sword demon could not help but scratch his head. This was also a top priority. He had prepared so well, but the breaking water arrow was not in the game at all. How awkward would that be? Thinking about this, the sword demon was ready to open the message to ask Lu Ku, at least to confirm whether she was online or not. In the end, the moment he raised his eyes, he found that there was still a figure in the distance moving in this direction. Is it him? The sword demon was not sure, but there was a strong premonition in his heart. Speaking of which, even if it was really the breaking water arrow, the sword demon might not be able to recognize it because of the makeup. One of the reasons why he chose this method of defending was that he needed others to help him identify the breaking water arrow. If he had to find it himself, he suspected that he would pass by the breaking water arrow without knowing. The figure was getting closer and closer. The sword demon found that the small team of players who were originally lying in ambush had already drilled out of the bushes and were ready to meet them. It's him. The sword demon was certain in his heart. While watching the approaching figure, he began to choose his position. However, after the figure completely drilled out of the shadows of the trees, the sword demon suddenly froze, because he saw that there was not one person coming, but two. Although one of them was also wearing makeup, the sword demon could still recognize that it was water depth. This change caught the sword demon somewhat unprepared. He was completely mentally prepared to assassinate the breaking water arrow, but he did not expect it to be in front of water depth. After making this decision, he did not hesitate or regret it. But when water depth stood in front of him, the sword demon could not help but hesitate. Making a move now meant that he would be breaking ties with water depth. After all, this was a completely different feeling. Chapter 5:16. Thank you for your hard work. Sword demon was still hesitating, but the approaching water depth and water breaking arrow had already started to express their condolences to their comrades. It was a pity that the players in the team didn't respond with the slogan for the guild, so their condolences seemed imperfect. However, water breaking arrow's position was perfect. So perfect that it made sword demon's heart beat faster. At this position, at this distance, not using a fog ambush would make people feel guilty. Was it guilt? He couldn't do it in front of water depth. It seemed to be because of guilt. However, since it was a choice, he had to bear all the consequences. From the moment he decided to do this, he was already destined to ignore water depth's gaze. It didn't seem to matter whether he was there or not, right? Moreover, considering the purpose of his trip, it was even better to do it in front of water depth. This could sound the alarm to water-breaking arrow, and let him see his determination. Even if water depth misunderstood me, I will definitely stop your plan. Do it. After a few seconds of consideration, Sword Demon had already made up his mind. Fog ambush. As soon as the skill was used, the air seemed to explode. Suddenly, a black figure had already shot out. The halo of an exquisite weapon unique to long kill short sai left a dim light in the high-speed movement. It was breathtaking. Who is it? As the players subconsciously shouted, Sword Demon had already rushed to 2 meters in front of water-breaking arrow. Disappeared. The figure suddenly disappeared. Everyone was at a loss. Was it an illusion just now? It seemed like someone was rushing over here. Everyone's thoughts couldn't keep up with the development of the situation. In the next second, the figure disappeared, water-breaking arrow suddenly flew back, and the figure appeared again. Sword Demon. For eyes met, water depth gritted his teeth. Guild leader. Seeing water-breaking arrow fly away, and water depth was also in a place where the opponent could attack with a raise of his hand. The people who were a little too far away to protect shouted anxiously. From these people's surprised, anxious, and concerned gazes, Sword Demon suddenly found a clear answer. He was even more convinced that his choice was not wrong. He had a friendship with water depth, but the guild had an even greater friendship with water depth. This could not be destroyed by water-breaking arrow. The last bit of entanglement in his heart was resolved, but the Sword Demon couldn't show a victorious smile because he knew that the attack just now wasn't completely successful. Broken water arrow's reaction was astonishing, and it was even more certain that he was the target of Sword Demon's attack. In the instant that he was attacked, he blocked and dodged. Although he was still sent flying, Sword Demon was very clear that the damage of his attack was not completely released. Being sent flying might be a method to dissolve the impact. With my current attack power, I might not even need to deal full damage to kill him. Sword Demon was looking forward to it. After all, the opponent was just an archer with low HP. However, in the thicket where the water-breaking arrow flew out, there was no white flash of death. It was regretful and helpless. Sword Demon knew that this attack didn't hit. He didn't have the ability to directly assassinate water-breaking arrow. This guy's skill was even more terrifying than he expected. But Sword Demon wouldn't be discouraged because of this. If the first time didn't work, there would be a second, a third. After sending water-breaking arrow flying, although he thought a lot, Sword Demon didn't even delay for a second in action. One attack didn't work and was killed instead? This kind of heroic assassin legend, Sword Demon didn't want it to happen to him. He wanted to save his level to attack water-breaking arrow a second time. A third time, Sword Demon, who was using quickness, had already turned around and rushed out. He had already chosen the route of retreat. However, he had just rushed out a few steps when he suddenly heard a soft sound. Sword Demon's heart tightened and his feet tightened. It's a trap. However, this route was carefully chosen by him, and he was sure that there wouldn't be any traps on this path. Sword Demon turned around and saw that Water Depth's bow was still aimed at him, expressionless. It's his trap arrow. Sword Demon sighed. He knew that Water Depth had such a skill. Sure enough, I shouldn't have acted in front of this guy. His existence is simply a variable. The corner of Sword Ghost's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He knew that the traps and arrows in the depths of the water could be connected seamlessly. He had no choice but to sacrifice himself. He already saw that the arrows on the bowstrings of the others were suddenly released towards him. After dropping this level, it would be even more difficult to kill water-breaking arrow. This was the only regret in Sword Demon's heart before he closed his eyes. A series of soft sounds suddenly appeared in his ears. Sword Demon didn't feel the pain of being shot, nor did he feel the teleportation after death. He opened his eyes and saw a black figure already blocking in front of him. That familiar, valiant and perverted figure. Wearing too much is really a hindrance. This person muttered as he pulled an arrow from his shoulder. But at least there's this little benefit. A series of arrows fell from the camouflage mage robe in his left hand. Everyone was dumbfounded. He had actually used this jacket to wrap up all the arrows that had been shot by everyone else. Gu Fei's skills, no matter when and where, would cause obstacles in other people's thinking. I'm not in a good mood right now. Throwing away the camouflage robe, Gu Fei waved his hand and pulled out his sword. The tip of the sword swept across the ground, and the wind from the sword rolled up the dead leaves flying, beautifully drawing a circle. This is my circle of swords. Those who step into it, die. Once upon a time, Gu Fei bluffed like this in Moonlit Night City. His purpose was just to scare others and then conveniently escape. However, this time he was very serious. Even if Water Depth stepped in at this moment, Gu Fei wouldn't show any mercy. Those who entered the circle were enemies, and there would be no mercy. Fuck, what are you pretending to be? Someone immediately shouted back. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and disappeared. This isn't pretending, it's strength. Gu Fei's sword was still pointed at the place where the cursing person disappeared. Everyone's hands holding their bows trembled slightly. He wondered if shooting the arrow would count as stepping into his sword circle. Everyone was subconsciously thinking about this question. Of course, this kind of word game didn't have any meaning at this time. The brave brothers from before didn't step into the circle, and were still instantly killed. No one dared to make any rash movements. Everyone looked at Water Depth together. Do you think you can still escape? Do you know how many of us are in this forest? Water Depth knew that it was time for him to speak. Do you know how many of you will die before you kill me? Gu Fei went tit for tat. Silence. As the leader, you have to think of your brothers. Gu Fei said. Speaking of brothers, Water Depth suddenly remembered the breaking arrow that flew out and hurriedly looked back. Don't bother looking for him. He's at the resurrection point. His position just now was too perfect. I couldn't help but kill him with my sword. Gu Fei said and turned to look at the sword specter. You won't blame me, right? It affected your quest. No, I'll just do it again. Sword Demon laughed. Makes sense. Gu Fei nodded and then looked at Water Depth. Leader Water Depth, we're going to leave now. If you want to stop us, then come. But remember to pick someone who isn't afraid of death. Otherwise, they'll blame you after they die. Without another word, Gu Fei and Sword Demon turned and left. Leader. The other players couldn't stand it anymore. They turned on the impulsive switch, and everyone put on the unafraid of death aura. Water Depth shook his head. Now isn't the best time. We can't afford this kind of loss right now. Don't forget, we're in the middle of preparing for the main city war. We can deal with this kind of trouble later. Oh, everyone replied. Notify everyone, don't provoke them. A small team isn't their match. Water Depth said. Understood. The few people present had clearly seen the strength of the two. Sword Demon's sudden attack, Gu Fei's insane skills, and the instant kill with a raise of his hand. These weren't things normal players could do. With Extreme Frost's current team of 10 people, it really wasn't enough to wipe out these two. Thus, the two walked elegantly through the forest. Extreme Frost crouched in the dark and looked up. Why are you here? Sword Demon asked. To find you, boss. Gu Fei said. Don't try to persuade me. Sword Demon easily guessed Gu Fei's intentions. No, it's just that we have a new plan. Gu Fei succinctly explained. Oh. Sword Demon was happy to see Breaking Water Arrow's face exposed. He obviously had no reason to reject such a plan. But who's going? Brother you? Sword Demon asked. This person was obviously the key to the success or failure of this plan. They who had met Breaking Water Arrow face to face obviously couldn't do it. Even if they covered their faces, it was hard to say if they wouldn't be exposed. The risk was too great. Apart from these, it seemed like the other three in the elite group could be trusted. However, Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shenming, this one big and one small, weren't serious. This kind of precise work was completely unsuitable. It seemed like Brother Yu was the only choice. No, there's a professional. Gu Fei said regretfully. The girl who stole your dagger before, remember? Even though it had happened 500 years ago, Sword Ghost still remembered it. The impression he had of Gu Fei was too deep. His trust in Gu Fei had only started at that time. It's her? How did she get involved? Sword Demon was very inexplicable. For him, Shi Xiaotian was a complete stranger. Walking on the street, I bumped into her. Then Lu Ke came to talk to me about something. She heard it again, and then she had a way. Weird, right? But the most important thing at present is actually the memory black box skill hasn't been found yet. Brother Yu has already inquired about it. Gu Fei said. Oh, while talking, the two returned to Forest Shade City. Okay, you go find Lu Ke and see how the plan is going. Gu Fei waved to Sword Demon. Where are you going? Sword Demon asked quickly. Gu Fei's move was obviously to separate. Go offline, boss. I've been looking for you in the woods for a long time. What time is it now? I still have to go to work tomorrow. Gu Fei waved his hand, turned around and left. The Sword Ghost stood where he was, watching the familiar, powerful and perverted figure walk further and further away, disappearing at the corner of the street. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.